All right, please be seated. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Policy. James, where is that on? What number is that?
You mean my better half?
Hi, good evening. I'd like to call this Committee of the Whole, Finance, Justice, Social Services, Tuesday, June 11th at 6:01 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Hartke. James. Jay. Kibler.
Here.
Kurt Langenheim. Maxwell. McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Petrie. Quisenberry. Richards. Rosales.
Here.
Schrader. Schwartz. Alex. Berkson. Carter. Coert. Esri. Harper. Kurtz.
Here. Thank you. I'd like a motion for the approval of the minutes, Committee of the Whole, May 14th, 2013. Mr. Rosales?
Second.
Second by Mr. James. Any discussion, changes on those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the agenda. Motion, please. Mr. Esri, second Mr. Carter. Before approval, I'd like to pull 7F off the agenda for this evening, not a policy. Excuse me? Is it F1? I'm sorry. Oh, F1, sorry, right. F1. Mr. Alex?
Mr. Chair, on the finance agenda, I'd like to move item G2 off the second addendum, which is the nursing home report, to be after item B1 with the rest of the reports. That ended up on the addendum due to a timing issue, but I'd like to discuss it as we usually do with after the auditor's report.
Thank you. Any other changes to the agenda? Addendum? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public participation. As we have rules, we state that 5 minutes for each participant plus an hour for the total of public participation. And we'll start with Ms. Sarah Livesey. Please come to the podium and hit the button on the front of your microphone. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Livesey, and I am very honored to be here tonight. Working with the Forest Preserve District in Champaign County has been something that I have done for over 15 years now in different associations.
Push the button again.
Put it on off.
It'll light up. No? There it is.
I was holding it the whole time. Overachiever. Okay, so I have worked with the Forest Preserve District in many different ways, and I am here tonight in hopes of being appointed to the Champaign County Forest Preserve District Board. My background is working as a biologist. That is my training for many years. And then the past decade, I have spent doing outreach and interpretation of natural resources to different national organizations and statewide organizations, and I'm here tonight to hopefully work with the Forest Preserve District and improve their capacity as well for our county. Any questions? Or
No, there's no questions,
Okay.
Sarah, just introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Amy Armstrong, please.
My name is Amy Armstrong. I am a Champaign resident, and I'm here this evening because in the agenda, it is, there's a discussion that I noticed online about increasing the Champaign County Developmental Disabilities Board from 3 to 5. It's incredibly important to me, this subject. I have a child who has a developmental delay, and I actually applied for that board position that's currently open of a 3-person board. In my research and in some public entities that I have a deep connection with, it is really almost better to have a 5-person board than a 3-person board in almost across the board, if you will. It would, when you go to look at this, members currently on that board are not allowed to talk to each other because it's only a 3-person board, number one, and that makes things difficult. Number two, it's a $3.2 million discussion that I think needs to be expanded out. We need to have a little more diversity in the board as far as age and maybe actually the age of the child that's impacted by the disability. So that's essentially why I'm here this evening, is to give you input from, as a community member, that I would urge you to increase that board from 3 to 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Ms. Jennifer Knapp?
Hi, Jennifer Knapp. I'm also a resident of Champaign, and I'm here to talk about the same subject. I work with an organization called Community Choices, and we're a cooperative of families, and also really encourage you to increase the size of the DD board from 3 to 5 members so that there's a diverse community, and 5 members can help better represent the diversity in our community. And again, as Amy shared, members being able to talk to each other is really important so that they can actually learn from each other instead of it being an individual decision. So I'd like you to consider approving that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knapp. Ms. Linda Tortorelli?
Hi, my name is Linda Tortorelli. I wear a lot of hats in the community related to disability. I am first and foremost a parent of a 23-year-old with a disability. I am president of the board and one of the founding members of Community Choices, and I'm also the coordinator of the autism program at the University of Illinois. I, too, support a board expansion from 3 to 5 members. I definitely, in that expansion, would hope that we would look for members that would reflect the diversity of opinion of how to serve people with disabilities that exists in this community, the diversity of disability itself that exists in this community, from physical to cognitive, while it is a developmental disability, and considering people on the autism spectrum, the diversity that exists there as well, and that it allows for more community participation and, again, expands the base of knowledge that could be shared among 5 that wouldn't be available amongst 3. So again, please consider expanding that to 5.
Thank you. Ms. Joyce Dill?
Good evening. My name is Joyce Still. I am presently a member of the Champaign County Developmental Disabilities Board. I can attest to the fact that it is so frustrating to not be able to talk to another board member. There's very little that you can talk about. Well, there's nothing you can talk about as a board member, because if you do, you're having a meeting at that point. You've got a quorum of 2. There have been many times in all these years that I've been on the board. I came on the board in 2004 at its inception. It's been very difficult to understand sometimes the vote that we might have, simply because there's no way to discuss anything. If you expand that to 5, it then allows 2 people to actually talk to each other. I've been on the board all these years. I barely know the other board members because you're afraid to even, hello, how are you? And we're not having a meeting at this point. So this kind of thing, I think, would really help to expand the board. I've been involved in developmental disabilities literally all of my life. My family helped start some of the services in Champaign County. There were none when my brother was born. He is now 61 years old. He lives in the community. I have a son who is developmentally delayed. My passion has been working with people and getting services for people who do have developmental disabilities. And I just want it to be something where people can actually discuss what is needed as opposed to hoping the person next to you understands what is going on as far as that is concerned. So I really recommend that you expand this board to 5 and allow them to make decisions in a much more informed way.
Thank you, Ms. Still. Appreciate it. Ms. Sue Suter?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sue Suter, and I'm a nominee tonight to the Developmental Disabilities Board. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be considered for the board. My career actually has been in disability and public policy issues. I've been the state director of several state agencies in Illinois, then have worked for the federal government, and then was president of the World Institute on Disability. So I have a great deal of interest in disability. I followed the board. I moved here, semi-retired, back to U of I 3 years ago. So I just appreciate you hearing us today. I look forward to, if I do have this honor, to working with the board and looking at services and choices and options for people with disabilities in Champaign County. Thank you.
Ms. Suter. Sheila Crane?
Good evening. My name's Sheila Crine, and I'm here. My son has a developmental delay, and I can't leave him at home alone, so he does come with me very often. You already do have a letter from my husband who applied for the position, but I wanted to make some comments a little more about how I think it might be a benefit to you as the county board of having another member on the Developmental Disabilities Board. And the Champaign County Board, as you know, values diversity, quality of life, justice, teamwork, and responsibility to the public. It's the board's vision to be recognized as a leader in providing the best customer services to the citizens of Champaign County. And in expanding the CCDDB from just 3 to 5 members greatly increases the opportunity to provide best services based on your values. Diversity will be expanded with board members also representing the younger generation and current best practices for the highest quality of life for those with developmental disabilities. Most of all, it will promote teamwork, since currently with only 3 board members, as you heard, they are not allowed to talk to each other at all or discuss any of these issues. I applaud the current board for working under such conditions. Such restrictions are not conducive to greater understanding and cooperation among all community groups, especially those vying for county funds. I think 5 members will also give you, the county board, a larger volunteer force and presence in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Ms. Pam Classard?
Hi, my name is Pam Classard, and I'm a parent of an adult son with a developmental disability. I also work at PACE Incorporated, which is an advocacy organization for people with disabilities. My grant is funded by the Developmental Disabilities Board as an independent living specialist. I believe that every person with a developmental disability should receive the resources that they need, and whether that be state money, private money, or the county money, which the board doles out. By increasing the number to 5, like the people before me mentioned, it would increase diversity. But I hope that if it is increased to 5, that they see this change as an opportunity. because I think informed board members, where they can have collaboration, they could realize meaningful collaboration if they were able to talk to each other, and there would be more diversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to speak in public participation at this time? Okay, thank you. I will close public participation and move on to communications. I have one. Mr. Gary Maxwell has asked, I'll be right there. Mr. Gary Maxwell will not be here this evening because of illness. Mr. Hartke.
Yeah, I just wanted to inform everybody that I attended the press conference yesterday at the Champaign City Building regarding the apparent gang violence that's been going on in the north end of what is Patsy and my district in Garden Hills area. We're very lucky in this community that we have multiple police forces and they all work together very well. I was actually driving home from the north end and saw the sheriff's vehicles heading towards the incident and that's a long way from where the sheriff normally patrols. So I know that that happens, but I also reassured the city council members that we as a county board will be available to look at where we can apply resources to making sure that our community is a safe community, especially when we're looking at the issues involved around justice like we are. So they were all very glad that somebody from the county was available to take questions and to communicate with them.
Thank you, Mr. Hartke. It's a very important issue. Ms. Petrie.
You'll find on your desk, and I thank Deb for providing this information about the rainfall simulator that I've arranged to have in the parking lot area before a study session on the 25th of June from 3:30 to 6. I hope everybody comes just a little bit early so you can take advantage of seeing this. It's a terrific visual to indicate to all of us what 2 inches of rain will do in relationship to the type of surface that it lands on. You can see in the picture there are 5 different emulations of surfaces there with old pickle jars underneath there, and you can see in the picture the differential as to how much water is in the jar and how clean it is. And so do stop by. I'm letting other groups know about this so they'll have the same opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Any other communications? I have just one more on your desk. Is a letter from Mr. Phil Crane concerning the expansion of the DD Board, for your information. All right, let's move on to policy, personnel, and appointments. Mr. Quisenberry, please.
All right, good evening. First thing on our agenda for policy, personnel, and appointments, we have an item for your information from Steve O'Connor. As many of you know, Steve has been having some health concerns, and he has decided to resign from the Community Action Board. We also have a resignation of Lacey Taylor from the Broadlands Longview Fire Protection District. The first thing for requiring action is an appointment to Broadlands Longview Fire Protection District, and Mr. Kurtz.
My nominee is Mr. James Jones.
Mr. Alex seconds. Would you like to speak to the?
No.
Okay.
Just the only applicant.
All right, any discussion on this? Yes, Mr. Carter. This is the appointment of James Jones to. No, this is the. Yep. Did you want to say something about that?
I'd just like to say something about it.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say I hope he recovers fast and I miss him.
I think we all share that feeling.
Okay.
Back to Mr. Jones. Any comments or questions? Patsy.
This is a general comment to apply to our many appointments to fire protection districts. I've been educating myself by reading the statutes. There is the potential of increasing the number of people on such boards from 3 to 5, and as I'm listening to these very strong arguments in relationship to the Developmental Disabilities Board. I hope that sometime we have an agenda item that we talk about the very same aspects in relationship to the fire districts. Thank you.
As always, all board members are welcome to bring things to me to be on the agenda. Astrid?
We've had enough trouble trying to get 3 on a lot of those boards. I think 5 is not likely.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. Moving along, for the Forest Preserve District Board, Mr. Kurtz.
My nominee is Ms. Sarah Livesey.
Second.
I would speak to that.
Okay.
I've interviewed Ms. Livesey, and I find her to be eminently qualified, as she's worked for years with the Forest Preserve as a biologist, and well, I think will be an attribute and an asset to the board.
All right, thank you. And we certainly appreciate her coming to introduce herself tonight. Mr. Schrader.
I don't know Ms. Copeman, so I won't speak on that, but I do know Sarah Livesey. I was on the Forest Preserve Board, and she was an employee, and she did a fantastic job. And I think she'd be a great addition to the Forest Preserve Board.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, for the County Board of Health, we have 3 appointments, but Mr. Kurtz?
2 applicants. Mr. David Thies and Ms. Betty Siegel. We cannot find at this point, though I am looking at all avenues to try and fill that 3rd appointment.
Mr. Esri has seconded. Any discussion with regard to this appointment? Patsy?
Yes, I have a couple of mostly information questions. It says on our website that there are supposed to be 9 members and that there are only 7, and even if these 2 are appointed and 1 more, we still aren't up to 9.
I don't have any other applicants.
Well, I think my question goes to the legal side. If we aren't fulfilling the board according to statute, what happens to any actions the board takes legally?
Well, I'm assuming as long as we have a quorum on any board, that action can be taken, and even if there's 7, there certainly can be a quorum. So I don't see any reason to stop any action of that board. Meanwhile, we're following the statutes as well as we can because of the applications that we get. And I've tried to search for, there are certain statutory requirements of
Right,
professions on the board, and they are filled. Right now, we're just looking for others from the community who have some background in mental health, actually. And if someone would like to apply for that, I'd be happy to accept their application. It's just that we don't have any other applications.
And Ms. Busey has said she will look into this a little bit more. I personally don't know what the penalty is for a governing body that doesn't appoint non-applicants to.
Well, I wasn't
to a
looking
board.
for, it wasn't a penalty, wasn't my focus. My focus was any action that they take, does that then put the county into a precarious legal position? That's my main focus.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 6, for the Developmental Disabilities Board.
My nominee is Ms. Sue Suter.
Do I have a second? Mr. Kibler has seconded. Again, Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. This is an extremely important board. Obviously, many of us, all of us here have major concerns on developmental disabilities, mental health in our community. I just want to say that the applicants, and many of them are here tonight, who I interviewed over a period of almost 4 hours, are all extremely qualified. They all bring a unique expertise and background in different areas of developmental disabilities and mental health, and I wish I could have picked all 5. And I'm working on trying to use their expertise in other areas as advisory to this board. But Ms. Sue Suter and her history and her background, I felt that at this point this would be the best that I could have chosen out of the 5.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Michael?
We have a well-regarded incumbent who applied, and you chose Sue Suter. How is she an improvement on Joy Still?
Well, I have some. So I'd rather not go into personalities and discuss why in detail why I chose one, but I do want you to understand that under the Liggett decree, consent decree, and person-centered planning and self-determination, I felt Ms. Suter fit into that area of the future of where mental health and disabilities are moving, and I felt it was important that we bring her expertise into that area.
Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Thank you, that's unanimous. Item number 7, for appointment to the Public Aid Appeals Committee for an unexpired term ending November 30th, 2013.
Mr. Andrew Quanstrom is my nominee.
Do I have a second? Mr. Esri, any commentary, Mr. Kurtz?
Yeah, I might as well. Mr. Quanstrom is the new supervisor of Township Champaign, and the Township supervisors normally sit on the Public Aids Appeals Committee, and we were short, and because we've had some changeover, and that's the reason for his application.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Ms. Petrie?
Yes, I have more questions about boards, and this one pertains to what it says on our website, that there's supposed to be 5 members on that board. There's only 3 now. Is this one more person, so that will make 4? Okay, so I don't see anything up on the website that shows an unexpired term.
The reason that you don't see it is because under statutory, this is a board that has been statutorily placed as in a partisan manner. There has to be 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and we didn't have another Republican to place on this board. Mr. Quanstrom filled the qualification for the 3rd Democrat, and we have 1 Republican, so that's why we only have 4.
Okay, and so then does that mean that I assume Michelle Mayo can only be appointed as an alternate
That's
and
correct,
not
because
as
she's a
a
Democrat.
full?
Because she's a Democrat, she can't sit on this board. She has to sit as an alternate if one of our Democrats are missing from that committee meeting.
All right, Lorraine, please.
Okay, my question is that this unexpired term ends in November of this year. Are we going to be appointing somebody else to that?
Sure. Do you want to, Deb?
One thing to be aware of is that all these appointments have to be township supervisors.
Right.
So it's a very limited pool of candidates that you have to select. And this appointment at this time is simply because the previous township supervisor who had been named was not reelected to the post, and so her successor is now being named to fill out the remainder of that term.
All right, I guess I would encourage our Republican friends to help us find another person to put on here.
There's plenty of
Any other questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes, but is not unanimous. Moving on, I guess we are at number 8, which would be the Public Aid Appeals Committee alternate for an unexpired term ending November 30th, 2014.
My nominee is Michelle Merrill, who's the new Cunningham Township supervisor.
Mr. Esri seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay
No.
or no. That also passes, but is not unanimous. I want you to pay attention here because for the Fine Arts Review Committee, there are 2 positions open. On the agenda, Stacy Gross is mentioned, but on the addendum, Robin Hall is mentioned. So I'm going to ask the chair for his nominations for both of those positions for the Parkland College Student Services Project.
Thank you. The nominee, Stacy Gross and Robin Hall, for both these committees.
Mr. James, seconds.
On your desk, Mr. Hall was a late applicant. You should have his resume on your desk distributed to you this evening.
And I just want to point out that there are 2 committees here. They're both Parkland projects. One is the Community College Student Services Center project, and one is the Technology Center project. So just want to make sure you're aware that both of those are being served by both individuals, not unlike the ones we did for the U of I recently. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That passes. And then I would like to go ahead and take the other appointment off the agenda. There is an appointment, off the addendum, sorry. There is an appointment on the first addendum for the Stearns Cemetery, one person for a term going from July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2019.
My nominee is Marlene Cherry.
Seconded by Mr. Kibler. Any discussion? Any questions? Lorraine? Okay, yes, we're looking at item number 10 on the second, or on the first addendum. Everybody with us? Okay. Everybody ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, moving along to the next section. Let's see, don't want to do finance, Mr. Alex gets to do that. We have reports from the county clerk. I would entertain a motion to accept and place on file both the May 2013 report and the semi-annual report. Moved by Max, seconded by Mr. J. Any discussions or questions for the clerk who's sitting right over there? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Next, we have an item regarding the Developmental Disabilities Board. We have had a memo from Mr. Peter Tracy outlining our ability to expand this board from 3 members to 5 members. We have had feedback from several individuals tonight regarding that as a thing that they spoke in support of. We also have commentary from the current board president, I believe, that indicates the board feels like it would be an improvement to have 3 members. So I would entertain a motion first before we start any discussion. So Mr. Alex had his hand up first, but I'll give the second to Mr. Hartke since he was first. Okay. All right, now let's have some discussion. Mr. Kibler.
I like the compelling argument of being able to talk to a colleague. That is a very compelling argument. One of the things that I don't know if this board can answer, but maybe if someone jumps up out of the stands, I may make a motion to suspend the rules. But I'm curious to know, is there a way for us to specify the the type of person who must fulfill one of the two roles that's going to be added. So for example, we talked about having peer diversity, whether it be age or different disability that the person has associated with. Is there a way that we can actually put in a level of diversity into these two, or is it something that we have no control over?
I don't know if anybody has an answer for that. I would suggest that communicating our intent with regard to diversity and then voting on the appointments based on whether the appointments meet that intent or not is one way that we can do that. I am not familiar whether we can specify what role each new board member would play or what diversity they would represent.
Thank you.
Mr. Kurtz, I'm going to let you go ahead and speak.
Thank you. That's the reason for my suggestion to go to 5. I think we need diversity, and that's exactly what I found in these 5 applicants, a very diverse background. I'll look very, very carefully, I promise you, at diversifying this board. As you can see, I've already made a major change in the board because I felt we needed a little bit more diversity, and I think that when I bring the nominees to you, if we go to 5, I promise you there will be plenty of documentation to back up my nominees.
All right, Ms. Petrie, I saw your hand up.
Yes. As furthering along the thought about whether the board has it within its powers to set up criteria for various boards, I would think we do, unless it is stipulated within the statute that this cannot be done, and as long as anything set up in any criteria does not counter what happens to be in a particular statute. So I don't know why the board can't do something like that.
All right, Ms. Berkson.
It's my understanding that nothing we do would be binding on any future board anyway, so we'd be talking to ourselves.
Mr. James.
I guess my comment would be, I've served on many boards, and they've either been small or we expanded them thinking we were going to get diversity and do more, but a board is only as good as the people that serve on it, and they show up for the meetings and do what's required of them. Just by increasing a number alone doesn't always mean you're doing the right thing.
All right, further comments, Mr. Richards?
We've talked about this change before, and I think the board came to the conclusion then that we hadn't seen enough evidence to change it. So I guess I would ask any proponents to say what had changed and to speak to the open meetings issue, which we already knew that if you have 2 people, there is an exemption so 2 people can talk. This is not a church committee meeting. We have lots of committees where we have new people who have issues with the Open Meetings Act, and it is frequently a pain for everybody, but the point of the statute is to make people do their business in the open. I have serious problems with us having 40% of this board that has $3.2 million being able to conduct basically secret meetings, not in the open. We have monthly developmental disability meetings where people are free to talk who are on the board. Now, they can talk with staff, they can work on this beforehand, but basically what the argument that we've been hearing all evening is this board should be allowed to do its business more in private and less out of the public eye, and I frankly don't buy this. This statute was put in place for Peoria County. They wanted to move to 5 because they were having quorum issues. They had a member who had not been showing up, so they wanted it at 5 so they could appoint new people and have a quorum to have their meetings. Since this has been put into place, I don't know of another county in the state that has moved their developmental disability board to 5. And we looked. I might have missed one, but we didn't see any. So at this time, I'm still not hearing enough for me to vote for this.
Mr. Kibler.
I apologize if it's in the documentation. I read through it, but I haven't found it. When would the terms officially start and when would they end, or is that not determined today?
I don't think that's determined today, is what I'm hearing. Mr. Alex?
Just to speak briefly to Mr. Richards' point, I don't find the open meetings argument particularly compelling either. What I find compelling is that it's been represented that there are more qualified applicants for this board than even 5, and that's something of a rarity to have that strong level of public support. I think one of the speakers earlier made the point that this is a group that has to deal with providing services to individuals of a wide range of ages, with a wide range of disabilities, and I think it's probably, I mean, when I was on the sanitary district board, we were a 3-member board, and we did okay, but that's because we had a relatively straightforward charter. I think an organization that provides the diversity of services that this organization provides in a field that's changing as rapidly as this would definitely benefit from having more than 3 people, and that's why I'm supportive of it.
Mr. Harkey.
Chris just kind of hit on my main ideas too. I think that that's a very good statement. Plus, if our concern is that things will be done quietly or behind closed doors, in my mind, expanding the board from 3 members to 5 increases the openness of the board, just that you've got 5 members now on that board instead of 3, and it's easier to pull together 2 votes to control something rather than 3 votes. So I will be voting for this expansion.
All right, Ralph, go ahead. Microphone, please.
We had substantial public input from people on that board who want to increase it from 3 to 5. We had no public input and no communications from people who are opposed to it. Has anybody got any arguments against having 5 people on that board?
I don't see any further discussion. One last chance. Ms. Busey has advised me that we will have a more detailed resolution at the full board meeting that will have an effective date and the dates of the terms for the expanded members. So if we're ready to vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. I'm going to request a division. So all those in favor, raise your hand, please. Ayes, yes.
These are the aye votes.
14. All those against, now raise your hand. If you raise it twice, you're going to be in trouble because it's on video. Okay, that motion passes. Okay, moving along, we're into Section D, which first item is the report of the administrator. I'd entertain a motion to accept that report and place it on file first. Mr. Mitchell, and seconded by Mr. Esri. Does anybody have any questions? Or Deb, do you have any comments first? Does anybody have any questions? All right. Moving next to, oh, yes, we do need a vote. Thank you. I have a cold tonight, so if I go spacing, that's what's going on. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion passes. Next thing is we have several pieces of information back from the job content evaluation group. I would like to omnibus items 2A, B, and C if someone is willing to make that motion, because they're all with regard to the state's attorney. Mr. Jay has made that motion. Astrid has seconded. And so these are the positions that Ms. Reed spoke to us about last month, and the recommendations for what classifications they came back as, all with regard to her adjustment of the staffing of the state's attorney's office. Do you have any questions or comments? No, we're going to discuss it before we vote on it. No, the omnibus motion is the motion on the floor, and it has been seconded. Ms. Petrie.
I'll probably be the only one, but I'm not in favor of treating these as a bundle. I think they need individual attention. It won't take that much time.
I guess I would, my next step, if there's no further discussion, would be to call for a vote, which would pass all three of those. So Ms. Petrie, if you have things you want to say about each one of them, I think you can have the floor to do that at this point. Now, this is discussion. This is when questions would occur. This is how committee works. We have a motion on the floor.
But I
It's
thought the
seconded.
motion on the floor was to consider these as omnibus, and if that
No,
passes.
I entertained a motion that moved all three of them at the same time.
Well, that's omnibus.
That means the motion incorporates all three of them at the same time. So
Okay, I
you
do
can,
have
you
some-
can raise questions
fine.
about them individually right now
Fine, I do have
if you
some
want.
questions.
Okay, go right ahead.
The facts and figures that are presented to us, I'm assuming, have no indication as to what will be the cost to the county for benefits. That's number one. And number two, I need to be reminded how these three positions are going to be funded.
I can speak, I can recall what Ms. Reitz spoke to us, and that they are funded within her current budget based on changes that she's made in her structure. Ms. Busey can probably speak to that in more detail.
Ms. Reitz, with this, with these three positions, even though she's adding a new position, she is eliminating a previously existing position, so she maintains three positions. The salary budget for those three positions, although maybe distributed slightly differently, will be the same as what the salary budget is in this year's budget, which also means there will be no impact on fringe benefit costs, because IMRF and Social Security are calculated on total salary dollars. Those salary dollars are not going to change. Same number of people are provided with health insurance, unemployment insurance, et cetera. So there will not be an impact to the budget.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Mr. Carter, was that a no? Okay, you both voted no? Okay, thank you. All right, moving to item number D, which is the Deputy County Administrator for Finance, which we discussed last month. I would entertain a motion for that, for accepting that one. Mr. James, seconded by Astrid. Now, can we have some discussion, please? Mr. McGuire.
Thank you. The only question I would have is, says it notes 2 county board members, but it doesn't note who or what party.
We're not on that one at this point. We're accepting the classification of that job. We'll talk about that thing next. Yep. We will, don't worry. All right, Ms. Petrie.
Questions? We're spending money like we have a great budget here. According to the range that is presented to us, with benefits, it's going to cost between $100,000 and $130,000 a year for this position, and I'm assuming the goal is that this becomes a permanent position. So I need a discussion on where are we getting the money to do this?
So, Ms. Petrie, would you address your estimate as to where you think we will be with that position, depending on market rates for this role?
I don't disagree with Ms. Petrie's number, although all of the fringe benefit costs are paid for out of separate funds effectively with so health insurance and
I know, but
salary
it's
will be
still
paid out
money.
of general, their costs, I agree. This is, and in the original memo requesting that the board consider creating and establishing this position, it was made clear that there are many risks with being so lightly staffed in your administration. There are things that don't get done. There are risks and liabilities in terms of your day-to-day operations. And so I guess my response is the money is going to come from the general corporate fund, And it may mean that we're very limited in spending in some other areas in order to make sure that this operation is appropriately staffed and supported for the operation of county government.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hartke.
Yeah, I've noticed this sometimes also with the nursing home board in that a lot of people tend to get to looking at these numbers and they tend to miss the forest for the trees. This position is going to come in and hopefully clean up our budget a little bit, find where we've got extra numbers. It's going to be a person completely devoted to looking at these numbers, finding new creative ways to deal with it. We've already been made promises that this person will have some grant writing experience, hopefully, so that this person can apply for multitude of grants and additional monies for this county. And so hopefully, and again, maybe I'm being way too happy or, potentially optimistic about this, but this position could be not only revenue neutral, but net positive revenue. And I think that I agree with the point that we are understaffed for a county our size, and this is a position that I think we need to seriously consider bringing on.
Thank you, Mr. Hartke. Mr. James.
Well, I guess I would just say that I was looking at it not on the aspect that they would find different avenues to bring more finance or uncover where we may be lacking, because I think overall the staff we have, in my mind, does an excellent job. I think at times this board seems to forget what we have in that pot, and we tend to overspend it. The reason I supported this was none of us are going to be here forever, and to have someone as Ms. Busey's been here many years, to be able to give her wealth of knowledge to somebody else as we're bringing them up, whether we hire them full, to take her position or not, but someone that can keep the ball rolling when something would happen. I mean, things happen every day to all types of folks, and I was looking at it that way, plus to ease the burden of all the responsibilities and meetings and all the running around, because it can get nerve-wracking, and not to say that her hair's turning gray or anything, but it does. And that's why I was looking at it that way. Finance and all that other stuff, I think the staff we have, I don't see anybody else coming on. They may bring some new ideas, but I don't think we're going to undercover a bunch of money that's going to help us.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. Well, I could tell you, for the last 5 months as the chair, even though many think, and Ms. Busey doesn't think that she's indispensable, she has an enormous weight on her shoulders. She does about everything that needs to be done on both sides of the aisle and on both sides of the issues of finance, when it comes to staffing, when it comes to just working on daily routine. I have to say that Mr. Hartke is absolutely right on his side of the of his argument, and Mr. James right on his side of the argument. And if you put both together, it's an essential position that has been unfilled for quite a while, and it is taking a toll. And so I feel very strongly in support of this position.
All right, Mr. McGuire.
Well, really, I just echo Al's words that really kind of paid it forward with the last 5 or 6 years of people that have left the county administrators' positions. And so we've saved money in that area, and now we have an opportunity to refill that position and move forward with the county. So, thank you.
Mr. Carter, you look like you want to talk, but your hand's not up.
Well, I think all these issues are important, but my concern is, why aren't we sitting down and discussing and working these issues out and have time to digest them? And we don't get that anymore. We don't get it, and I'm just unhappy about it. And when you come to a caucus, a lot of times you don't have time to even discuss the whole agenda. And this is really bothersome to me. If I got to sit up here and vote on something, I sure don't want to make it so the next guy that come behind me got such a mess that they don't want to fool with it. And we shouldn't do that. We should have ample time and sit down, discuss these problems, and solve them. So this is my concern. I'm just unhappy about it.
Thank you. Any further comments? Gonna call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, now, moving along to item number 3, once I wake my iPad up here. That is a request from Ms. Busey, because of the import of this position and its work with the board. Normally, a position like this would be handled under the standard county hiring process, but Ms. Busey has requested that we have 2 board members participate in a search committee. I've talked to her a little bit about options associated with that, and I think we'll have more information on that as time moves forward. At this time, I don't think we need an action on this with regard to the board. And my intent, I have 2 people in mind for sitting on this. To your question earlier, Mr. McGuire, I think it should be a Democrat and a Republican. And my intent is to nominate Mr. Alex because he is the finance chair and a Democrat, and Mr. Kibler as the Republican because he is the vice chair for policy, personnel, and appointments. And I'll give those names to Deb, and she will continue to work on how she's going to set up this search process. And I'll say now that we've talked about other ways to include more board members and their feedback in this process, because it's, we all know it's an important position, and the budget's a very important item. So look for more details on that, I think potentially at the full board meeting. Right, Ms. Busey? Okay. Moving on. Item number F was removed. F1 was removed. I don't know that we have any other business. Designation of items to be placed on the county board consent agenda. I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, and 11. 3, 4, 5, 6 in A, and A, section A, and then 9, 10, 11. 7 and 8 were not unanimous, so they are not on the consent agenda. And then I have C1, and I think that's all I have for consent. And then C1? Okay, you are correct, thank you. Yeah, it had a few. Okay, so that is not on consent. And then item H, Ms. Busey, can you talk to this item? I don't think I've encountered this before.
Well, historically, the county board has canceled committee meetings in the month of July and brought the business of the board that comes up in the month of July directly to the county board. So at every June committee meeting, we leave it to the individual committees to determine whether or not you would like to cancel your July meeting and bring the business directly to the July county board meeting.
Well, do we need a motion? My expectation is that we will have some appointments in July, but probably not very many. I don't currently have, the item that was removed, I don't think has an urgency to be dealt with in July, or could be dealt with at the full board meeting in July, and I don't have any other pending items, so I will entertain some comments now, Mr. Kibler, and then Mr. Harkey.
If I'm not mistaken, the recommendation would go to the full board, and then we'd officially vote to change the calendar for next month, correct?
Every committee that decides not to meet, we will have an adjusted July calendar for you to vote on at the board meeting.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Harkey?
All right, I've just going to get this all out in the first one because I saw this is on for every meeting, and we've already talked about this in facilities. I think this is an abrogation of our responsibilities as elected officials to just do this by fiat, that we don't meet in July in committee. I think that's irresponsible. I have a strong feeling that we'll come back, maybe not this time, but I'm sure one of these days, where we'll have to have an immediate vote on something that has yet, if we don't get it out, it won't make the RFP, or it won't make this year's budget, and we'll have to rush around and push a vote on that. We're also told that there's so much work that we need a new deputy administrator for $100K, and while that may be true, and I may agree with that, by the same token, you can't have enough work that we as county board members don't need to show up. I mean, we're the ones who are in charge of this county, not the administration, as much respect as I have for them. We're also told that this is because people cannot schedule their extensive summer vacations around 3 meetings planned 7 months out. I can't accept that because now we're considering having probably the most important meeting of our board in July 30th, to receive the ILPP report, one that's going to have probably the most interest from the community. And now we can have that meeting scheduled now 6 weeks out for July, yet we still don't have enough business to call our committee meetings in July. So I think this is ignoring the public interests, and I think it sends a bad signal to the public in general that we just don't meet in July. So I'm sure that'll probably not carry much weight, but that's certainly my opinion.
Mr. James.
Well, historically, since I've been on this board, almost 10 years, for the most part, we've taken July off, and then nothing drastic has happened. Life has gone on. I think the public knows that there are times that a rest is maybe required or needed. The business we can discuss at that board meeting, a lot of times when we sit here, a lot of it's forwarded on to that board and we rediscuss it. As far as the report coming in, that's exactly what it is a report. There'll be no action on it. And personally, I think that a time to sit back and enjoy the festivities that are going on, and to spend time with family and go to ball games and do all the other things. We're not the only entity that's a public body that does this. There's Congress, there's the Illinois Senate, all those that are making bigger laws than we'll ever dream about. I said bigger laws, I didn't say they were good laws, but, to meet and spend taxpayers' money sometimes for things that are very small in nature and not earth-shattering in my mind, I think the taxpayers are a little bit more upset with that end of it than us taking some time off. So I'm in favor of it. I attend every meeting. If there's a meeting called, I'll do my best to be there, but there are times that I have missed a meeting in the past, but I've had a good reason to do so. And I just hope that the fellow board members here take note of that.
Mr. Langenheim. Turn it on, please.
Legislative bodies of far greater magnitude all take summer breaks. U.S. Congress, British Parliament, all of them. There's no reason, it's unreasonable to expect all of these people to show up 3 times scattered through the whole month. You're never free of some obligation to this county board for 52 weeks out of the year.
Ms. Bergson?
I just don't feel that essential, and I don't think, for the most part, we are.
Mr. Rosales? You have not
take a
spoken
vote
yet.
on it?
Hold that thought, because when we're done talking about it, I've got an idea. Lorraine, please.
I'm going to say that I am in support of cancellation of the July meeting for the Cal, because we've always did this, and at our meeting at the Highway Department committee decided that we're going to forego our July meeting. So I'm going to support this.
All right, Mr. Carter?
I support my colleague fully.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Harkey, I've been holding off because other first-timers
Fair enough. No.
hadn't spoken yet. And
Understood. No, hey, maybe people other people in this room don't consider themselves very important to the community, but I kind of do. I think that's the point of democracy. And again, we will have business come up, you can be assured, and this is how democracy works, is we do it in committee, then we do it with general board. Also, I don't accept that I have plenty of time to have a good time around 3 meetings a month. I can guarantee you I can find time to have fun this July and still make it to these meetings. And again, I realize that I'm kind of spinning my wheels here, but I just think that it's irresponsible to do it by fiat and every July we're off. When you talk about other bodies that take times off, those are bodies that meet in session for weeks at a time and stay in session and do their work all day, not have 3 meetings a month for an hour or 2. So I can see where this is going, but I strenuously object.
So hopefully we've gotten this all off our chest for this one. What I'm going to suggest, Mr. Chair, is that after the other 2 areas have had their meeting, we take a vote on it, because if one of them needs to come, we might as well do any other business that needs to come, correct? So deciding just for policy doesn't make sense. Is that fair?
Let's go with all 3.
Okay. Then I will yield the chair.
Okay, now we're up to finance. Mr. Alex, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item on the finance agenda tonight are the monthly reports from the treasurer, which we have the link to the website were provided to us earlier. Treasurer's not here tonight, so I would attempt to answer any questions people might have. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion that those reports be accepted and placed on file.
So moved.
Oh, wow. I heard Mr. Quisenberry and Mr. Rosales, I think. Are there any comments or questions about the treasurer's report? I mentioned in my finance memo that these don't, this doesn't reflect much of the property tax receipts, because the first property tax deadline wasn't until, I think it was about the 5th of June, and the report cutoff date was the end of May. There are no comments or questions. All those in favor of receiving the report and placing it on file, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. The next item is from the auditor. Again, monthly reports. The auditor is here. Would you like to say anything, sir? If there are any questions or comments for the auditor, yes, Ms. Michaels.
You knew I would ask, didn't you, Mr. Farney? I'm just looking at the
Yes.
purchases not following the purchase policy and emergency purchases here. The expenditures here for Xerox, color overages, I mean, is this something that's normal?
Yeah.
I mean, should we buy a different copy machine and be done with these thousands of dollars?
From
or-
what I understand, this is the first time this has come up, and Ms. Busey actually was part of the negotiations to fix this, so I'm going to defer to her. She was actually involved in it.
These are annual charges that cover almost all the copy machines in the county, and we pay once a year for overage on the contract and for color copies. And in previous years, we've paid that invoice when we receive it, and then have found errors in it, and it's been very difficult to work with Xerox to get corrections. So this year, we decided we are not paying it until Xerox gets it to match what we say the overages are. And you will continue to probably see these potentially, because we wouldn't pay any invoices until we got last year corrected. So they waited, because it took them 5 months to do it. They didn't get paid for January, February, March, because we were doing this, because it just made no sense to us. It was impossible working with their accounting department.
Sure, absolutely.
Does this have anything to do with if we had other printers? I mean, I guess what I'm asking, is there a more efficient way if we just own the machine versus paying them?
No, I don't think so. This lease agreement works extremely well for us, and it's centralized, it's countywide. It was just an issue with the Xerox accounting department, not service or equipment or anything like that.
Thank you. The purchases not following purchasing policy will be actually taken up at the full board. So that's for information only. If there are no questions on the monthly report, I would ask for a motion that the auditor's monthly report be received and placed on file. Moved by Mr. James, second by Mr. McGuire. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. We'll take up the nursing home report now, as per our change earlier to the agenda. Unfortunately, Mr. Maxwell is ill and could not be here with us tonight, but he did send out a email summary of what happened at the board. Mr. Hartke is here tonight, and I'm sure will give us his take on the state of the nursing home.
I'd be happy to. As usual, Gary put together a real good report on kind of the numbers, but I'll give you a little bit more of a management update. Your board of directors is going to be taking a stronger hand over control of the nursing home, to let you know. Our chair, Kathy Emanuel, has been meeting. Gary has been very instrumental in this. Jeff was very kind enough to add some very good words of advice to us. We're really trying to look at a way to, you're going to hear the magic word metrics a lot coming out of this nursing home now. We're looking at ways to measure a baseline of what is our performance, and then how do we measure real improvement above that in quality of care, in resident satisfaction, in food quality and things like that. We're going to start introducing a monthly policy of having different units within the nursing home coming in and delivering a report to the board of directors on what they're doing to improve their unit, where they're moving forward, what their metric is now, and where they hope to have it. The idea being that, we are inspected by the Illinois Department of Public Health and other units and not getting as good a scores as we should. Therefore, our own internal review system should be improved so that we are inspecting ourselves, getting ourselves up to that better score, and then when we get inspected, we do better. This is next month. We are meeting next month, and it's an organizational meeting to look on driving what our goals are for the next year to 18 months in driving this, and I think hopefully some people are going to be really pleasantly, not necessarily surprised, but pleasantly rewarded by what's going to come out of this board in the next few months.
Thank you. Ms. Michaels.
I don't know who to ask this to, but on the addendum here, there is a line item, it says miscellaneous NI revenue was $333,000, and it was budgeted for $500. I just didn't understand what that was. That's a big chunk of money in there to pull it out of the hole.
That was the forgiveness of the loan, I believe, that we passed.
Okay, so they added that, okay.
Yes, he explained the auditor, or the accounting thing that they were doing, which seemed reasonable at the time. Again, I am no accountant, but it is related to that debt forgiveness that we passed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yeah, I'd like to thank again Mr. Maxwell and Mr. Hartke for their diligence. I've only been on the county board for just over 2 years, and I feel much more informed than I ever did before, and I really appreciate your work.
Mr. Carter?
Yeah. I've been trying to get somebody to find what is miscellaneous. And I can't get that answer. And I'm asking you, what is miscellaneous?
Mr. Hartke, do you have a comment as to that?
Philosophers have been arguing that
Steve?
question probably since the beginning of time. What does miscellaneous mean? It's stuff that doesn't appear in other line items that falls under it. I can't speak to it specifically. Again, I'm always one that watching every single number is, again, maybe missing the forest for the trees too much, but miscellaneous is just that, miscellaneous items that don't fit under other line items.
Are we paying that? Is that a debit?
If it's in the cost report as an expense, yes, it could be anything from, I don't know, office supplies to anything else. This is not my areas. I do not watch that budget like per line item every time. That's not.
I'm not beating up on you.
I know you are.
But look, it ought to be something. Jesus Christ, what is that, 2? I see that now, but come on, what the?
Mr. Carter, I think if what I'm hearing from you is that you would like to go in deeper depth in terms of the breakdown of those items, I would suggest that you probably should talk to Scott Gima. I mean, he would be able to tell you what every dollar under miscellaneous was. It's just the nursing home books are, hundreds of pages long, and to provide that detail to the county board every month, we'd have a telephone book on our desk every month. So they group things together into larger line items, and miscellaneous is where revenue and expenses that don't fall under any of the other line items go.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I know, but look, a few dollars I can see, but when you start miscellaneous, It don't ring no bell with me. I can't find out what the devil. It should be marbles or something that you're gonna put down that is expended for. But this just kind of,
Again, Mr.
I don't know.
Again, Mr. Carter, the fact that this is a high-level summary means that a lot of things are going to get grouped together into each line. And if you would like more detail on what those line items are, you know, we can either ask the nursing home board to provide us with more detail, which I think would be a negative because I think people are more inclined to see the big picture if things are summarized for us. Or you could contact Mr. Gima and ask, you know, what is in this specific line item, and I'm sure he would be happy to tell you. Mr. Kibler.
You know, it's hard to say, why is your business losing sales? It's a good question. A lot of people like to have the answer to. One, there's a lot of concern that it's cyclical, related to the same spike that we see pre-winter, post-winter, as we usually do. There are more competitors currently in the county, and yeah, we need to improve our quality so we get more people convinced that this is where we need to go, and that's where I'm hoping that this metric leads us in not just ways to measure things, but actually, you know, to show improvement and lead to improvements that we can then use, hopefully, and again, this is at high level of what we're talking about, in a potential marketing campaign. The idea being that these metrics not only give us something to measure ourselves and measure our progress by, but also give us something to sell to the community. So that's hopefully one way to increase the numbers. And again, it comes down to getting, as you well know, Carl and other, you know, hospitals to send us their Medicare patients, and they're working on ways to increase those relationships. The various respiratory therapy and all that, we've had a hard time getting that off the ground, but we have now started a new potential wound care unit that's working with Carl that we're hoping gives us, you know, more things to put on the resume to send people over. But you're right, the numbers are down, and the reason revenue are down is because census numbers are down.
Ms. Busey is asked to be recognized, and then I have Ms. Bergson.
There's just one piece of good news about the census being down, though, and that is the fact that we have had a greater influx of Medicare residents who are going home, which is good, which is what the industry wants and expects in today's world. So we've had a higher number than normal of residents who we are sending home instead of keeping or transitioning into long-term care. So that is a good news piece that does have an impact that results in the lower census as well.
Ms. Bergson.
As a person with lots of friends in nursing home care, a number of people who come out of the hospital and Medicare is paying the nursing home, they can go anywhere they want, and they are going like to Meadowbrook because it's more fun. We need to make the nursing home attractive to Medicare people.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes, I was just scanning through the detail. I wanted to point out that I only can find two miscellaneous categories in here, miscellaneous revenue and miscellaneous NI revenue, and both of them are broken out. Miscellaneous revenue is broken out on page, looks like 10 as lunch reimbursement and late charge revenue, and then there's another miscellaneous revenue which is not detailed but so small as to not be significant. And miscellaneous NI revenue is broken out as investment interest and restricted donations and something else, well, the interfund transfer, which we discussed earlier. So I think all the details in here. I just wanted to mention that for any viewers that are concerned that it's not detailed in the report.
Thank you, Mr. Quisenberry. Ms. Schwartz, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry, Ms. Petrie.
Yes, I do encourage our liaisons to the nursing home board to strongly urge the board to start looking at and analyzing what is happening in the community in relationship to other facilities being built. By 2014, there are going to be 5 new facilities within the county, and this changes, Josh likes to use the term metrics. It's going to change the metrics terrifically as to filling the beds at the nursing home, and I do hope that the nursing home board begins to have serious conversations concerning those so we can have some planning on this.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions for Mr. Harkey with regard to the nursing home report? Seeing none, I have a couple. I think it's great news that the nursing home's looking to take a more active, or nursing home board's looking to take a more active role. I had breakfast with Mr. Maxwell the other day, and he communicated that as well, and talked about, specific things like food and like, opportunities there, that things that we can really focus on to try to increase the, both the score of the nursing home receives in various areas, and the perception of the quality of the nursing home and the underlying quality of the nursing home. So I think that's good news. We've been sort of wanting that for a long time, so I appreciate that you guys are moving in that direction. I don't recall if I had a motion to accept the nursing home report and place it on file. I don't think I did, so I would entertain one now. So moved. Mr. James, is there a second? Mr. Esri. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Okay, moving on to budget amendments and transfers. The first one is Budget Amendment 13-00025. This comes from the Recorder's Office. There's a request for an increased appropriation of $11,983. May I have a motion to forward this to the full board with a recommendation for approval? Mr. McGuire, is there a second? Second. Mr. Kurtz seconds. I mentioned this in my memo. This is essentially a case of Ms. Frasca wanting to add an employee with some overlap to replace an employee who is about to be retiring for, I understand, a period of 6 months. If there are any questions about this, I would probably think Ms. Busey would be the best prepared to answer them. Mr. James. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you back there. In that case, I would refer questions to Ms. Busey. Ms. Frasca. I was waiting for her to have a seat. Mr. James.
Barb, when I'm looking at this, 6 months training to me, other than for law enforcement, just seems like a long time to train an employee. Because in my experience, when I worked for HUD and other positions, we had some jobs that had a lot of detail and they needed a lot of background with forms and such. To me, a normal training period in most jobs is 30 to 60 days when you bring staff on and get them trained. Now, my other side of that is, like I've always said about Miss Busey, if something happened to her tomorrow, we don't have anybody ready to take that other than Mr. Kurtz, and we know what would happen then. So I'm glad that you're thinking ahead, but I just think that that's a lot of expense, and sometimes for 6 months, to have 2 people there trying to do the same thing, I know personally myself, it would drive me absolutely nuts having someone shadowing me for 6 months. So I guess I would ask, do you really think that you need it for 6 months, or could you scale it back some?
6 months.
Okay.
Let me give you a little bit of detail. We have been horribly understaffed since 2004. The Sangamon County Recorder's Office, which is very close in population, they're slightly smaller actually now than Champaign County. They have 11 employees. I have 4. So if we have someone out sick for a day, it causes a huge slowdown in our capacity to work. And when we're not working efficiently, we're not producing revenue. And not only does the new person that's coming in have to learn how to use the computer system, they have to learn how to call nearly 300 different types of documents for the correct and pertinent information that's to be indexed. Remembering that these documents have to be searchable 100 years from now. And not only do they have to learn how to use that computer system to index documents, they have to learn how to use not only the computer system, but also the books in the vault to find documents that may be quite difficult to find. For example, I found a document for Deb this afternoon that was from 1937 that was one paragraph long. And if I hadn't been here for 16 years, I don't think I would have been able to find it. So I do think that the 6 months, it gives us some breathing room, and it allows us to make sure that the person is trained to be the productive employee that we really need.
Mr. Kibler. Apologize if I'm taking you out of order.
Thank you. It almost sounds like the request should be for a new employee in the office. Why the request for 6 months? I think Stan has hit the nail right on the head. 30 days is all home for me, a little much in my opinion as is. But why not come to the board for just a full position if you feel like it's warranted?
Because I've come to the board so many times before and asked and have always been turned down. I pay almost all of my expenses out of my automation fund. Very little besides my salary comes out of my general corp. I've lent money to the nursing home when it's needed it. In 2004, when we lost Mary Jane to ovarian cancer, I was not allowed to fill her position because there was a hiring freeze. In 2010, they said, since you haven't filled that position, we're going to take it away from you. So now the hiring freeze is off and I no longer have an open position. So it's kind of a catch-22. There's either a hiring freeze and I've not been allowed to hire, or the hiring freeze is taken off and I've lost a position. So I don't know. I guess if I thought that there was any chance that I could possibly get another employee, I would have asked for it. I believe in making the most of what I have, and we run a very tight and efficient office, and I take pride in that. I don't think there's any waste. If we were back in 2005, 2006 with the boom again that we went through, I would say we have to have more people. But right now, if I can get somebody up and running by the time Diane leaves, I don't see any reason to burden the automation fund with another employee at this point.
Mr. Hartke.
Well, I would just add that we have just tonight, I'm sorry, usually I'm pretty good about that. We've just tonight moved to create a new position, so it sounds like the hiring freeze is up and we're looking at that. And I'd much rather, if there is a real need in the office, hire a position than extend a retirement like this. I am complete agreement with Mr. James that 6 months is way too far, and I will not vote for that. I mean, I've been in a lot bigger offices where people are given a lot less lead time to learn their jobs, and I would also have concerns about then who's been hired for this position, that they can't be more prepared for it, that they need 6 months of their supervisor to double up on them. Perhaps a way to look at this is to start the person earlier and leave it on the current salary rather than adding new money to this. I just can't see a 6-month training period for a filing position. And perhaps, again, maybe the automation fund should be used more to automate the searches if the searches are so difficult. Again, I don't know exactly how the office is written, and that probably puts me in trouble, but, you know, there's got to, I just think that 6 months of training is an awful long time, and $12,000 is $12,000.
And my response to you is shame on you for disparaging my workers and disparaging my office. It's a very complicated process. We have records that go back to the mid-1800s. You know what? It's fine if you don't do it now. That's your choice. I'm coming to you and I'm trying to be as tight with my budget as I can possibly be while still maintaining the operations in my office. And I'm trying to explain to you why. If you don't understand why searches are so difficult, come in and spend the day with us, and I'll show you why.
I guess most of what I was going to say too is kind of I think what I'm hearing are two different things. One, you feel you need an employee, and maybe you thought that maybe this would be a way to catch up by making this go a 6-month, but honestly, 30 days is more than sufficient to train somebody. Otherwise, maybe we need to look at the applicants. The other part of this is maybe that part of that $11,000 could help to do some more automation or something like that, because I know we're doing some upgrades to our systems, and I didn't know if that would be part of it too, but I guess because of the way it's worded, I just can't, I don't feel comfortable with it.
I appreciate your comments, I do. And I guess when I was taking this into consideration, there's many facets in the office that have to be learned. Diane's going to be taking much of her saved up vacation time and personal time. So just in order that we function at the rate at which the title companies and the banking industry expect us, which is a one-day turnaround in documents, I thought that it would not only allow us to train someone to where there was no lag, but also to give us kind of a boost through the busy summer and fall months.
I'm going to get Ms. Busey next, who had a specific comment.
And Barb just said part of what I was going to say. Barb and I talked about the best way to approach this as well. And in the period in 2011, when real estate severely slowed down, and Barb, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in 2011, end of 2010, 2011, 2012, she was doing okay with the staffing level that she has. And the recorder's office is probably one of the best developed offices in terms of technology in Champaign County. So she has already done an extensive amount of converting her operations to technology-based operations, which is probably one of the reasons she can function with a staff that's less than half the size of a similar sized county in the state of Illinois. But she is, and you see it in my monthly reports, one of the biggest areas of growth and revenue this year is in real estate transactions, which means her office is busier. And so given that, and sure, maybe you can train someone in 30 days, but she has an employee who's leaving who's been with the county for over a decade. She can have complete confidence in the competence of that individual's daily work. The employees in the recorder's office will probably for their whole first year of employment encounter different things that they don't necessarily know how to do. So clearly, a person who's brought in for 6 months before that person leaves is going to be much more reliable and proficient in the daily operations of the recorder's office on the day when that long-term employee leaves than if that person had only been here for 30 days. So I want to support Barb in her request. She is using her automation fund rather than the general corporate fund to pay for this, bringing this person on for this period earlier, and will then continue to try and operate with the staffing level under which she has been functioning for the last few years.
Mr. Richards.
We've heard from the recorder about how she's kept her budget taped together the last basically 10 years with a minuscule staff. How many positions have you had cut from your peak?
From my peak, 1 position.
And
That
there's
was
what,
actually
4
previous to our peak.
4 in the office currently?
Yes.
This isn't coming from General Corp. I would say that if the recorder says she needs this for office staffing for the next 6 months, that we should grant that now. I don't think that Josh was disparaging your staff, but I think that if Barb says that she needs this over the next 6 months for both the summer busy season and to get somebody trained, that we should give her the benefit of the doubt here.
It's a matter whether you can train people for something in 30 or 60 days. You can't to be a teacher or a lawyer. And in a operation as complex as the recorder's office, with only 4 people of all things, everyone has got to be a master of many trades. And I think that it takes longer to train them. I think it sounds very legitimate to me.
I kind of feel for you, but I don't know, are we going backwards in our time, Uncle James? Now, their position is a little different. And I hope she wouldn't just opt out on us and not give us the opportunity to put it out there and search for somebody like we usually do if we don't have anybody. But these other departments, man, come on. If you're off a day, who takes your place? When I was in the workforce before I went to school in Creedmoor, I was the electrician when the electrician wasn't there. I was the tractor driver when he wasn't there. I was the furnace builder when he wasn't there. And go right on. Well, these departments should have people that come in behind each other to take these places. And and that kind of on our fault because we are not close to these departments and see how they are operating. You shouldn't have nobody that miss a day that you can't fill a place for them. And this is 2013. And it seems like, I don't know, it's something happening in our country. We don't have any doctors anymore. You can't go to the hospital and your doctor opt out, leave you. What's going on, people? There's something.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Mr.
Well,
Langenheim.
this is sad.
I'm just not following how this directly relates to the issue of adding the position.
I'm going to address our problem and get off. It's depending on the operation that this person's got to take. 30 days is kind of tight. It's kind of tight. Now, if you want somebody to do your job correctly, they got to be trained for it. But I'm surprised that somebody's not behind the person that have this job that can't take that place.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Langenheim.
We've heard plenty of arguments against a long-term training period, but we haven't heard any suggestions of a substitute for it. I presume that there's some training is necessary.
I think I.
Thank you. I have a couple of sort of clarification questions. Had you felt that you could have come to the board to add a staff member, would that have been your first choice rather than this approach?
At this point, I probably would keep the staffing level that I have because I think that any more draw out of my automation fund takes away from what the automation fund was truly created for, and that's working to automate the office. So unless I thought that I could get another employee out of the general corp fund, I probably would prefer to just have someone on board. And actually, it's not going to, when you work out the actual numbers, it's not going to be 6 months because it won't be approved until this board meeting. Then it'll have to go out, for applications and interviews. And so, you can take at least probably another 2 months off of that.
May I have a follow-up question?
Yes, Ms. Petrie.
Is all of the cost of benefits going to come out of the automation fund also?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's not.
Do you want to clarify that?
The fringe benefits get paid out of the fringe benefit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Thank you.
I think I have Mr. McGuire next.
Good, thank you. I think there's been a discussion, there's been about 40 or 50 positions that haven't been filled during this time the budget changes. And obviously now, as the budget's improved, all the elected officials and the county's trying to reorganize and improve the services to the public and their operations. And I think Barb is trying to do that now with this position in advance of the person leaving. I probably have 30 different classifications throughout the university that I have some part in, and every one of them has some different amount of time it takes to train those people for those positions. But this isn't just that. This is an opportunity to fill a position and help her for what is a returning real estate market in the county. And those people that are trying to sell those homes or purchase those homes need her office to be able to make those transactions. And I think that's what she's trying to accomplish here. I know there's some frustration with what's happening, with all this happening at once like this, and with those people that have been working so hard for the county over these last 7 or 8 years. And so, you know, we want to understand that as they do their work. So I'd like that we support them and give them this position to move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Schrader?
Thank you, Mr. Alex. I think there's been a lot of interesting discussion we've had here, but I think, and I hope we don't swerve into where we're trying to tell a countywide elected official who's done a very good job during some very difficult times financially through the county, how to tell this individual how to do her job. Just like Ms. Busey stated, she's done a tremendous job from the standpoint of technology and updating things, and she's done a great job of keeping her staff levels relatively low to a bare bone minimum, and yet was able to comply and bring about the services needed from our county's office, recorder's office. So I'm just hoping we don't swerve into this, where we're telling our official how to run the operation that she's been elected to. So,
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. I think we're ready for round 2, unless someone who has not had a chance to speak. And I think I had Mr. Hartke.
Okay, first off, I believe I began my comments by suggesting that we look at actually creating you a position. I also want to add that I don't think I'm disparaging your employees by doing my job as a county board member to oversee the spending of funds. If that was not my job, this would not be on this agenda. I also have about 15 years in SQL data mining experience in my life, and automation is always going to make it faster. If you're having a hard time finding things, that could be a suggestion. I offered it as a suggestion. The idea that this person has to be trained like a lawyer or a teacher, I mean, a lawyer or a teacher goes to 4 years of college. I'm assuming this person we've hired has already been to either some sort of college or some sort of active training. That's why we're hiring them, and we're just training them into the specifics of the position. You know, when you're a resident in a hospital, you spend 1 year. You know, 6 months is a lot of time to learn how files are kept. And again, if I'm disparaging by simplifying, I apologize. I do not mean to, but I think that that's an extensive amount of time, and that is my main complaint here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Take a crack at that one.
The general county personnel policy allows for a 2-week window for training, and there have been times when department heads who are subject to following that policy have asked the board for a longer window. Never, I don't think, up to 4 months or 6 months, but where it has been extended. But remember that that policy does not apply to elected officials. And there are probably times when elected officials are filling positions sooner because they have large personnel budgets, because they have a lot of staff with more turnover. When you have a small office and a staff of only 4 people, you don't have that opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Schwartz has not had a chance to speak yet.
I just want to make sure that I understand. We're talking about her fund.
Right.
We're not talking about general corp.
No.
So just because we have the legal right to micromanage somebody's office, I think we belabor the point. I think we just voted, I wasn't here, I would have voted against it, but we voted to spend over $300,000 to fix a crack in a county courthouse. We're micromanaging somebody's budget that she has a balance in, that she wants to hire for something that we can agree or disagree that should be 6 months. But seriously, I don't think I should have any say in that, even though I have a legal right to. So I would support it.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Mr. James?
Since I started the conversation, I just want to make clear that I do support hiring employees if we need them, instead of hiring consultants to tell us how to do things. I'm in support of this. I've heard more reason as to why. I guess it was the message and the delivery of the message that came across. And I, too, was concerned about if we set a precedent where we start allowing department heads to do that, they'll run with the ball, because in human nature, if someone has an office bigger than theirs, the other guy wants a bigger office. So that's the only reason I brought that up. I am glad that we're training employees. I've said it from day one. We need the staff there to follow up. And I hope in the future, Barb, because I've been here, unless I missed that meeting, and it may have been, but I can't recall when you've asked for help unless it went internally and then it never came back to the whole. But I definitely support employees. I'd much rather pay employees and take care of buildings all out of the same fund. Thank you.
Mr. Quisenberry?
I'm not hearing much new, so I'd like to call the question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Quisenberry. I'm going to let everyone at least have a chance to speak. Ms. Cowart?
Okay, I'm hearing several things, and I think that 6 months is a long time to train an employee, even though the other employee's been there 30 years. You've got 4 people in your office, so each one of the 4 people do a different job, and it's not a cross-section, because the times I went in there, all the employees could help me with anything that I needed. And I'm wondering who's going to train this person when Diane go on her vacation, to use up her vacation time. Who's going to be there to train her, since you're saying that she's going to be the one to train this person for 6 months?
Yes, everybody in our office is cross-trained.
Okay, we're going to discuss this for a minute. We need to take a vote on calling the question, and there's been some dispute over whether that is 2/3 majority or a simple majority. Do you remember what this was last time we looked this up?
I think our rules are majority.
I think we had nothing specific in our rules, and therefore it's 2/3 majority. All right, well, I'm going to blatantly abuse my position as the chair because I haven't had a chance to speak yet, and then I will entertain a vote to call the question. I'm kind of dumbfounded about this discussion. I mean, here we've got an elected official who's been in office since 1996 with a request for a relatively small amount of money to run her office the way she sees fit using her own funds. And I just want to caution the Finance Committee, as the Finance Chair, that we expect county staff and elected officials to do the best they can within their budget. And what we're asking for when an official comes to us and we micromanage their office and say, well, why don't you do this, why don't you do that, why don't you do that, what we were asking for, we were basically telling them is, next budget time, you need to pad your budget, because if you do what we tell you and save some money, when you come back for some accommodation to run your office the way it needs to be run, we're going to stick it to you. So I apologize for abusing my prerogative as the chair. Does anyone else want to talk, or can we vote?
Call the question.
There's a second. Everybody's had a chance to talk. The question's been called. All in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. I'm going to call division. I need a show of hands. Those in favor of calling the question, please raise your hand. Those opposed to calling the question, please raise your hand. Okay, the question has been called. We'll now vote. Motion is to forward budget amendment 13-0025 to the county board with a recommendation for approval. Specifically,
increased appropriations of $11,983 from the Recorder's Automation Fund to enable a training period before long-term employees' retirement. Are there any additional questions about the motion on the floor? Would anyone like to call for a roll call? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion carries. Moving on, budget amendment number 13-00026. Increased appropriations of $7,917, increased revenue of $6,146 for the Victim Advocacy Grant for the state's attorney. I'm going to take an omnibus motion with budget transfer 13-0004 for total transfer amount of $6,146, also for the state's attorney's office, also for the Victim Advocacy Program grant match. May I have a motion? I saw Mr. McGuire and Mr. Mitchell. Yeah, Mr. Mitchell. Sorry, Mr. Kibler. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Budget transfer, or budget amendment, 13-00027, $712,860 from the County Motor Fuel Tax Fund to cover the final payment on the Windsor Road project. Here, Mr. Kurtz and Mr. Jay. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Budget Amendment 13-00028 from the Regional Planning Commission for Chris Rural Job Access. I think we can omnibus this with Budget Amendment 13-00029, also for Chris, NFP Medical Access. The first is increased appropriations and revenue of $60,000. The next is increased appropriations and revenue of $95,000. These are revenue neutral. I may have a motion. I think some is Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Cohort. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have Budget Amendment 13-00030, also from the Regional Planning Commission. This is also revenue neutral. This is to accept grant funds for a rural mass transit study. Moved by Ms. Cohort, second by Mr. James. Is there discussion of this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have Budget Amendment 13-00031, General Corporate Public Properties. This is for $9,110, new money from the fund balance for mandatory elevator upgrades to comply with Public Act 096-0054. I hear a motion by Mr. Schrader and a second by Mr. Mitchell, and that is open for discussion. Ms. Petrie.
Just for the public record, I'll ask you the same question I asked in caucus, and that is to prepare us down the line of a ballpark figure for maintenance and repair of the other elevators to meet this new standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Petrie. Anyone want to field that? Do we have an estimate, Ms. Busey or Mr. James?
We have an estimate of $75,000 that has to be in next year's budget to do this.
Thank you, Ms. Busey. Are there any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have Budget Amendment 13-00032. This is from General Corporate Information Technology, $13,936 from the fund balance to upgrade network equipment. I see Tim and Andy back there. If there are questions on this item, we can certainly direct them to them. May I have a motion? Make the motion. Mr. Quisenberry with the motion, Mr. Kibler with the second. Are there any questions for county staff? Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes, if
You guys want to shout from the back or come up to the table, either way?
Andy
Why don't
could
you come
come
up to the table so the camera can see you.
come use our high-tech microphones here. I'll ask this question about this one, but it kind of applies to the next one as well. These items were not budgeted for.
Correct.
So they were somewhat unanticipated. I know UC2B has been percolating for some time, and I know that your email system didn't get old overnight. Do we have a longer-range IT plan that kind of has where these things are going to pop up so that we could be a little more proactive on budgeting for them?
Well, the servers and the networking equipment, we're working toward including in the capital equipment replacement budget, but we haven't fully budgeted that yet. We started putting away money for those last year. So we've got a number of servers that aren't funded in capital equipment replacement yet, and none of our networking equipment has been funded in capital equipment as of this time. Almost the entire network was built through construction projects. So all of the network switches in all of the various buildings were purchased as part of the construction projects and weren't capitalized. So we've included them in the capital equipment replacement budget starting in FY 2013, and we're building up a reserve, but we don't have much of a reserve right now for these particular requests.
Okay, if I could follow up a
Yes,
little
Mr.
bit here. So, given that, could you tell me from the network equipment side, what's the oldest equipment we have in service on the network side at this point?
We have equipment in service on the network side that was purchased in 1996.
Okay, so 13 years old.
Yeah.
Do you have a, I won't say an ideal, but an optimal replacement cycle that you want to institute for network equipment?
We're not going to replace network equipment until it fails.
Okay.
We're not just going to pull it out because it's 5 years old and replace it. Servers, we try to replace every 3 to 4 years. We originally had a 5-year replacement cycle on servers, but we found that wasn't living up to our expectations. So now we're generally able to get 3-year manufacturer warranties on the servers, so we're anticipating a 3 to 4 year lifespan on all the servers that we buy. And that generally has followed through. We start to see performance problems with the servers after 3 to 4 years.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kidler.
Mr. Chair. Reading through it, it seems like this is going to be a redundant connection between all the different buildings.
Correct.
And we're not going to be replacing anything from the past, so the $800 a month will continue to be $800 a month, and the new one.
It should go down.
Okay.
Our UC2B, the ICN connection, the Illinois Century Network connection that we have right now, which is an 8 megabit connection, is $807 a month. The UC2B connection is 80 megabits, and it's about $180 a month. We're going to keep our ICN connection because we're not able to get as many IP addresses from UC2B as we were originally promised, and we need to maintain the IP addresses that are on the ICN network for our external website and our email traffic and such. But we anticipate that in July, with the new pricing from CMS, that the pricing should go down to about $500 a month for 50 megabits. So that's probably what we're going to stay at with ICN.
Is there a reason to, apologies, may I ask a follow-up? Is there a reason to push this for today as opposed to try to budget it for next year?
Well, there's an immediate need to beef up the external network right now in relation to the RFP that the sheriff just issued for inmate phone services, and particularly for video visitation. Our current external network, which is what we're planning on running the video visitation over, won't support it. So it will have to be done in order for us to implement video visitation for the sheriff's office.
The sheriff, what's the time frame on that? Is that, I take it that's something that we want to have up and running before December 1st?
We're still in the process of evaluating the RFPs. I anticipate we'll begin negotiations probably towards the end of next week with the vendor. Figure 30 days to pick the final vendor, get a contract, and then we're looking at a couple months, like 2 months before they can get it in. So the answer to you is yes, but it's getting closer to that time.
Thank you, Sheriff. Are there any other questions for our IT staff? Mr. Quisenberry?
They might as well stay around for the next one.
Yes, yeah, don't leave the table. If there is no further discussion, we'll vote on, this is only the first item, this is 13-00032. This is the upgrade to the external networking equipment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. On to Budget Amendment 13-00033, same funding source. This is from General Corporate, $20,367 for 2 upgraded email servers and reporting tools and software to upgrade the email system. Do you guys want to give a little summary here? Is there anything you have to add to your beyond what you said in your memo? I'm sorry, thank you. Motion, Mr. Carter, okay, thank you. Mr. Carter and Mr. Mitchell. Thanks for the reminder.
I don't have anything to add to the memo other than email is as important or more important to county employees as telephones ever have been.
Mr. James.
I guess looking at that part of your request, I would say if the system's already up and running, they're using it, granted it may be slow.
It's beyond slow.
Well,
It's beyond slow.
I still use a can with a string to my neighbor, so I know
that
what
is not
slow
acceptable. That is not acceptable to the judges and the attorneys.
But looking at a budget and with all these things coming up, and we've had a lot of budget amendments, I think in my mind, we're only 6 months away from a new budget. I would, in my mind, prefer that be delayed 6 months. I don't think it's something that is urgent, that it's going to make.
Well, I can pretty much guarantee you that before December 1st, it will be urgent. We will be back before December 1st when the system completely fails. It is held together with masking tape and paper clips right now.
Well,
Seriously.
and that's fine, but, you know, I deal with a lot of emergencies too, but if I don't have the money, I hold it together with masking tape and Band-Aids until I can get there.
We're doing the best I can, but, you know, I'm in the same boat as every other county department with limited staff. I have 9 people to support 3 shifts of over 1,000 employees with 750 workstations on our network. For me to devote more than 1 person part-time to managing our mail system means that there are other areas of county IT that go unserviced, particularly to the extent that we're going to be looking at not being able to service computers on people's desks because I have to have people babysitting the mail system.
Mr. Harkey, I'm sorry, Mr. James.
Well, I was going to ask, so are you getting a lot of complaints or concerns that emails aren't being sent to the right place or coming in?
It doesn't have anything to do with them going to the right places or not being received. That doesn't have anything to do with the age of the system. What we're having problems with is 3 to 4 minute delays, switching between folders in your email, not being able to access your calendar, second and third shift at the jail and the nursing home, not being able to access email or get automated reports that come in during the night. It's a serious issue.
Okay, one last question, and I'm sort of behind the 8 ball on all this technical stuff, so bear with me. So by upgrading a server, that's going to make a difference to the computer in an office to be able to?
Yes.
Even with an age on a computer?
Correct. The back end server is out of storage space, and it has a 4-year-old processor in it, so it'll have a faster processor, it'll have more memory, it'll have a new version of Microsoft Exchange, which is better able to deal with the size mailboxes that we have. And it'll be, we'll go from a scenario where right now we have both we have 2 different, what are called mail stores. Basically, half the people are in one store and half the people are in the other store. They're both located on the same physical piece of hardware server. What we'll be able to do with the 2 additional servers is split the mail stores, which will offer a more efficient environment for the email system.
Thank you. Mr. Harkey for round 1.
Can you guys tell me when the current system you're using was basically installed or
2009.
2009, okay.
That was our last upgrade.
That was your last upgrade, okay.
Correct.
What's the original system that you're
We've
using
been
right
using
now?
email since the county, since Tim built the network in 1996.
And this is just basically a descendant of that original system that's been
Correct. We've
upgraded many
always used
times?
Microsoft
And now your goal is to kind of wipe that away and start with Microsoft Exchange as a new system with new?
No, we use Microsoft.
It has been
Exchange. We've
Microsoft
always used
Exchange.
Microsoft Exchange. We're going to be
Okay.
going from 2007 to 2010.
Okay, and that upgrade you think is going to handle a lot of the problems along with the servers, or
Yeah.
mainly it's the hardware that
Yeah.
is the issue?
The 2010 offers significant enhancements in terms of redundancy, in terms of using less expensive, slower speed
Sure.
hard drives.
No.
And it also offers enhancements in
And
areas of e-discovery.
this is the same email system that's used by our entire county, from
Correct.
the judges through the county clerk's office
Yep.
to what we use right here?
Yep.
I hate to micromanage someone's budget, as we were just being told, but I think this is a good investment for our county. It also is a way for us to better communicate with the residents of the county via email, which is the way I have had 2 phone calls and I've had a dozen emails since I've been on the county board. So email is how people are contacting us. And I think that this is definitely something that we need to start upgrading. And I have also heard the horror stories about how bad it is, and I have been in a situation where when you click on a folder, it takes 2 minutes for it to bring up all your emails. Now, they could probably clean out their folders a little bit, but we don't require that. So I think this is a good investment, and I'll be voting for it.
That is one of the things that we are going to be looking at to reduce the stress on the system. We're going to be working with the Technology Oversight Committee to come up with archiving and retention rules. There's many things that we can't delete for reasons of FOIA and potential lawsuits, but with Exchange 2010, there are more efficient ways of archiving mail as opposed to the older versions of Exchange.
Mr. Kurtz.
Prior to being the chair, I never had to use the county system, and now I do. And I can tell you it's very, very frustrating to put in something and try and get something out when it sits there telling me that it's trying to communicate with Microsoft Exchange all the time. And mine aren't urgent most of the time, but I get inquiries from all areas of government, whether it be from the justice system or from education or from supervisors around the county, and it gets difficult when you have to look up and research items on the computer when it's a multiple of time, and it can take up a lot of time when it comes to 1,000 employees. So I'm in favor of this upgrade.
Thank you. Mr. Quisenberry for round 2.
I have not spoken yet to this question, so.
I
This is my
apologize.
first time speaking to this. And I have a couple questions.
Micromanaging him, Chair Alex.
My bad.
So my first question would be, what kind of analysis have we done with regard to outsourcing email rather than maintaining it ourselves? You've already said how much of a drain it is to run email, and basically email is a commodity today. So have you looked at what it would cost for us to rent our email as opposed to buy it?
We haven't looked at a cost for outsourcing. There are a number of issues surrounding cloud-based systems like Google Mail as far as the county goes. One of the biggest issues is what's called CJIS compliance, which is compliance with FBI guidelines for sharing criminal justice information. And if basically, the way I understand it is cloud-based email systems are not considered to be CJIS compliant because there is no way for the cloud-based provider to ensure that every single person that possibly might be able to access the email has had a criminal background check run on them. So based on that, if we were to go with a cloud-based email system, it's my understanding that the sheriff's office could no longer use, the sheriff and the state's attorney could no longer use our email to discuss any pending criminal justice-related information. The judges have also indicated that they're not really in favor of having their emails put on a cloud-based server. They would rather have people that they know, like the IT staff, in control of the servers. And then the third thing is we're in the first year of a renewal of our Microsoft Enterprise agreement. So we're locked into full licenses for the Exchange server for another 2 years. It's possible that in a couple of years we will review that and look into getting hosted email, but right now there seems to be a desire on the part of the department heads to keep it in-house.
If I could add to that, on the cost perspective, we have somewhat looked at it. Currently on our system, we pay per seat for the license to use Microsoft Exchange, which means if we have one computer at the jail and 7 people use it, we only pay one time for that.
So like this computer right here is a seat. All 27 board members could use this computer without incurring additional licensing costs because we're paying for a license for the machine.
And if we were to go to cloud-based system, you would definitely have to pay per user because you could never guarantee when a user would be accessing the system, which would dramatically increase our costs for most departments, primarily because the sheriff, the juvenile detention center, and the nursing home all run 3 full shifts.
Okay, I would be more ready to support this. I know why this is needed. I live this in my real work job. But I understand compliance issues. I see public bodies choosing all the time to go this route, and it's a moving target. So what was not acceptable, last year may be acceptable now, depending on who you're working with.
Correct.
I would just like to know what the cost difference is going to be, because it's a commodity. It's a thing that no IT department who wants to be focusing on their highest value work wants to be doing. So
Right.
I would have liked to see that as an option.
But from this standpoint, we're in the middle of a 3-year contract with Microsoft where we're paying per seat, so it wouldn't change our cost. It would actually increase our cost if we went to something cloud-based because we would still be required to pay for the seats.
I've been in your seat before. In 2 years, we will talk about the 5-year life cycle of the servers we just purchased, so we'll keep on doing the same thing for another 3 years.
hopefully
I've been in that seat before, so.
Hopefully, in 2 years, things will have changed enough that we can consider a cloud-based system. But some of the other considerations, not just email, I know it comes up frequently, is why we stick with Microsoft products and don't go with something like Google Docs in the cloud. And a lot of that is because of some of the software packages that the county has purchased over the years. The 2 of the biggest ones that come to my mind are the New World software, which is in use by the Correctional Center and the Sheriff's Office, and also the JANO system that's in use by the court system. Both of those require a working word processor on the computer. They don't accommodate any kind of cloud-based word processor. And in my conversations with both Aegis, which is New World, and JANO, they don't, at this time, intend on developing their products in that direction. So at the very least, even if we were to go to some cloud-based system to replace our Microsoft Office products, we would have to continue to purchase licenses for Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Access for the public safety unit and the justice system.
All right, thank you. Before Mr. James goes to sleep, I'll stop asking.
Thank you, Mr. Quisenberry. Mr. Kibler?
Thank you. Just curious, how long will these servers last us based upon projections you have before you think we may have to expand this, assuming we don't go cloud?
These servers, with an archiving policy that the departments agree to, should last 3 years. And by that time, we'll have the money capitalized, so I shouldn't have to come back and ask for a budget amendment to do this again.
Thank you, Mr. James. Final question is, do we have the money in the budget, and will it hurt us if something else comes up in the next 6 months?
I mean, yes. I mean, no and yes. No, we don't have the money, and yes, it means it'll hurt us if we have to spend the money on something else. I think this has been presented as essentially an emergency request, and it's up to this committee to decide whether it's sufficiently emergent.
Can I have clarification on that? Was
Yes.
this an emergency?
Deb?
Yes.
Okay.
Deb gets the vast majority of the department head calls complaining about the email
And
systems.
I would add that I've gotten personal requests on this, for supporting this, from the sheriff, the coroner, the recorder, and the director of planning and zoning are all indicating that this is impairing their ability to do their job. Mr. Kibler.
I think just one final comment to that. For emergency items like this in the future, it'd be great to know how many help desk tickets or how many tickets were assigned to you guys that are backlogging you, to kind of give us an idea of how much you're being impacted from a department standpoint. So I'm going to vote yes for this, but just in the future, if you have emergency items like this, bring ticket information and so forth. Thank you.
I think Ms. Busey has something to add, and then I think we're ready to vote.
Just to help you, on 2 different Monday mornings, I sat in front of my computer, and in an hour, the first thing on Monday morning, when I can look at my calendar and typically answer probably 30 to 40 emails, I sat and stared at my computer and probably only was able to deal with 3 or 4 emails before I had to go into a meeting, and could not do what I needed to do. You take that times 1,000. The presiding judge was ready to hold the IT director in contempt of court because he could not get done what he needed to do before he started a murder trial on Monday morning. This is a very critical issue for the operation of the county offices and county government.
Mr. Carter.
Now, we sat up here and soaked up $200,000 miscellaneous, and the man need this. So give it to him. Let's go.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Are there any additional comments or questions on the motion?
Huh?
Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That was easy. Moving on to item D1, this is a request for approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Champaign to provide animal control services. May I have a motion? Mr. Esri, and a second by, I think, Mr. Hartke got his hand up first, Ms. Gort. Ms. Hughes is not here, so we will leave Ms. Busey the honor of answering any questions with regard to this. Are there any, Ms. Petrie?
Well, this isn't so much a question as, again, I want to get something on the public record that I mentioned at caucus. I happened to have to talk to Stephanie about something totally different, but in the course of the conversation, I asked her if she was comfortable with this contract, and she did indicate to me that it creates a very tight budget for her, that Champaign would only agree to a 3% increase because she now has a considerable subset to her budget covering overtime, and she really wanted something more like 5%. So I hope when we go to the next budget cycle that that's an articular file to remember to work on that. She told me her aim is to cover about 80% of the overtime through the fees. Thank you.
And she did get 5% for year 2 of this contract and 4% built upon that 5% for year 3.
Okay.
So, Ms. Busey, this is the first, caucus was the first I'd heard this comment. Is this, I mean, do you think are we getting held up here, or is this a fair contract? And who negotiated it?
I think it's a fair contract. Ms. Juice negotiates it with the Deputy Chief of Police for the City of Champaign, and they both go back and forth. Wages are not going up 3%, so she gets a little bit of buffer in the first year. And the buffer in the second year with getting a 5% increase, and quite frankly, it was negotiated too late for the City of Champaign Police to be able to include a larger increase based on the authority that they had for their current budget cycle. Right.
Okay,
exactly.
so if I understood your comment in caucus, Ms. Petrie, the concern was primarily overtime, that the staffing level in animal control is such that there's considerable overtime hours, and
I
that
hope
the
I'm not-
increase doesn't cover that?
Ms. Busey can double-check my statement to make sure I'm not misrepresenting my conversation, but from my conversation, my takeaway is that she has quite a bump or increment bump due to overtime cost, and she was trying to balance out her budget with a percentage increase in the various contracts. Not just Champaign, but this is the one on in our packet for today. Is that a fair assessment?
That is fair. That is a correct assessment.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mr. Richards?
So I'm confused. Does this cover our costs for animal services for the city of Champaign or not?
We are somewhat at a loss to answer that question, I think, without Ms. Juice here.
My understanding was that it comes very close to covering the cost, but by year 2, it will cover the cost. In year 1, there may be somewhat of a loss for animal control.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. We have 2 items from the Regional Planning Commission. which I will take in omnibus fashion. The first is to request approval on application, or approval of an application and if awarded acceptance of a grant for developing a hazard mitigation plan. And the second is requesting approval of a statement of intent to participate in multi-jurisdiction all hazard mitigation planning. I see Mr. Mitchell there to make a motion and Ms. Court to second. Is there any discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those will pass and be approved in omnibus fashion. The chair has indicated to me that we would like to take a brief recess, so we'll do so. 5 minutes?
5 minute recess. All right, let's get back in session, please.
Okay, thanks. We've had a couple of lengthy discussions tonight. We may have a couple of more coming up. We have a gentleman here, Bruce DeLashmutt from Bellwether Advantage, who's here to speak to item F5 under the county administrator agenda. So I would like to ask if we could have a motion to modify the agenda to put his item next. Thank you, Mr. Langenheim. Second by Mr. Kibler. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you. I'm going to turn the floor to Ms. Busey now to talk about item F5 under the county administrator's report. This is a cost analysis for fee reviews of fees for the county clerk, recorder, and sheriff. And do you want to do the presentation and then take a motion on the approval of the agreement for the full study?
Yeah, that's probably.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Deb.
As some of you may know or not know, under the statutes, the county board has the ability to increase fees for certain areas, and those areas fall under the jurisdiction of the county clerk, the recorder, and the sheriff. These are fees for services if the county has a cost analysis study done that documents the fact that the cost of providing the service is greater than the statutory maximum for that the fee is set by the statutes. We did such a cost analysis study in 2002, and as a result, increased county clerk and sheriff's fees in 2003. It had been a long time, obviously 10 years since we last did that, and we learned about Mr. DeLashmutt through a couple of other counties who, at budget time, are going through the process of looking at their fees and thought it would be timely to look at it with him. So the sheriff, county clerk, and recorder and I met with Mr. DeLashmutt about 4 weeks ago maybe, to talk about what he would propose, and he was able to do a preliminary analysis of each of the three offices for $1,000 for each office. And the office holders all believed that was a reasonable fee to pay for preliminary analysis to determine whether or not it would be worthwhile to go forward. So they each paid that fee. The preliminary analysis was done, which is what Mr. DeLashmutt will now deliver to you in an overview of whether or not it would be advantageous for us to do the full study.
Great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Thank you for having me. I was saying during the break that this is my fourth county finance committee in the last 30 days, and yours is fairly genteel. So, so I'm Bruce DeLashmutt. I'm the president and owner of Bellwether, which is a management consulting firm. And we provide, among other things, government performance services. And that includes a fee review on county offices that are allowed to charge fee either by statute or by county ordinance. We believe that we're unique in that we offer the preliminary study that Deb spoke of to provide county leadership with the insights necessary to make the decisions. So in the earlier discussion, I heard a gentleman of the board say that he would rather pay employees than consultants, and I agree fully. And what I'd like to do in the next few minutes is to show you how you can do that. So your department heads are strong stewards of the county funds. So a fee review is never a question of how county fees are administered. A fee review is just an economic evolution of the increase of cost of goods and services over a period of time. So within a county, such as yourself, with an average annual wage administration of, say, even 2% per annum, over a 10-year period, you can very quickly become out of date on just the labor cost of providing the services that you do. If you add on top of that, that all of the technology costs are increasing as well, the infrastructure costs increase as well, over a very short period of time, a county can be subsidizing, and that's really the key word. You can be subsidizing feeable activities from your general fund, which literally creates the conversations that you're having this evening of trying to restack the deck because feeable services are not matched to an appropriate fee to cover the cost. Bellwether believes that setting fees to match service is good public policy. Now, to do that, though, there is a length of Illinois statutes that need to be followed. There is a tremendous volume of Office of Management and Budget rules on how to calculate indirect cost. All of that, thankfully, allows me to have a job every day. Now, we did the preliminary study, and I'm going to give you an overview if that'll pleasure the board, and then I'll take whatever questions you have after that. So let's start with that our preliminary study actually uses some leading indicators from your budget. So if you think about the overall budget, we take all of the activities in your budget that are not feeable and remove them. And then we look at your fee revenue to see if that fee revenue actually matches the remaining cost in your budget. Now, the exception to that is the Sheriff's Department, which has a width and breadth of budget items that really dwarfs the other departments. So there's a couple of other techniques inside of the Sheriff's Department, but the county clerk and the county recorder, which the county recorder is by far the lion's share of feeable revenue for the county. So inside of the Sheriff's Department particularly, but still the other departments, our analysts use a blind comparison database. So we've used public information to collect the fees from other counties. We call it blind because we put in the number of square miles in Champaign County, where we put in your population, and we put in a couple of other GDP numbers, and the database matches you to others but never tells us who they are. So that way, if you don't particularly like one of your peers, it's not a matter of are you better or worse than them, it's purely a mathematic formula. So the result of that exercise, and it's a high-level exercise, it's intended to tell you what the size of the prize is. So that exercise across those three departments creates a gap of between $335,000 and $476,000 in potential feeable activities. And I stopped there because the operative word is potential feeable activities. So the second part of the study is really to start finding one of two things. The first one is which of our assumptions on your budget didn't quite pan out the way we saw that. So you have lots of different, all counties seem to have a different way of calling something in their budget, and the big one is miscellaneous. So it does take us a bit of detail to really make sure that our understanding of your budget is what it is, so the numbers always move a little bit. The second part of it is, just because you can charge a fee doesn't necessarily mean that you want to or should. So you could, for example, find that a potential cost of providing a service is, let's say, $50, but that cost has such a tremendous value to the population that you're willing to underwrite it and list it literally at a loss. So what we do is we take that large number, the 335 to 476,000, and we discount it. And this is where we've been reading the tea leaves a little bit about Champaign. So we've looked at past board actions, we've looked at your current fees, and our analysts, and this is a big swag on our part, but our analysts decide that 40 to 60% of capture seems to fit the culture of the board as we see it from the budget and actions that you've done in the past. It's not very scientific, but essentially means we don't expect you to get $335,000. We expect you to probably get 40 to 60% of that as a realistic target on the far side. Now, in addition to that gap, what we noticed is, and this was repeated in all three departments, and actually I heard some of it in discussion in this evening. It appears that your infrastructure cost may in fact be undervalued in your county reporting. And it's hard to know because, again, we did a preliminary, we haven't peeled the onion all the way down, but based off the general reports and some of the indicators in there, that it's some strong indication that the actual cost of infrastructure isn't reflected well into your customer-facing departments. So you'll see in the proposal that we propose a full review, which is to say a compliant review with state statute and federal guidelines that allows the board to take action and adjust the fees. But we're also recommending a cost allocation plan be developed relative to these three departments so that you could say, that you clearly have an understanding of what your IT costs are per department, what your facilities costs are per department. That information actually has a lot of use in several other discussions. I couldn't help but listen to the discussion around the animal control department, and having that kind of cost allocation data creates a real transparency around negotiating interdepartmental or intergovernment relationships. But it truly is a matter of how do you allocate all of the cost to the county to the fee of picking up one dog, if you will, that simple example. So I'll stop there, and what you have in front of you is, I believe, a one-page summary was provided in your packet, and then the three individual reports to the department heads, all of which culminate onto a final finding that states their individual gap. For example, in the recorder, that's on page 5. How can I be helpful?
Getting reoriented here. Ms. Schwartz.
I'm trying to understand the methodology. So you were talking about two things. One is expenses that don't get covered, and the other one is comparing it to the blind study where you compare it to the other counties' fees. So the numbers you're talking about are which one?
They are both. They are a combination of budget exclusion and comparative data. It forms the range.
Okay, so I'm not sure I follow that. So let's say that whatever the county's comparable to us charge 5 times more, but my expenses are fully covered. So how can you combine these two methodologies? It's either comparing the fees or checking the expenses that didn't cover.
Right. So on the range that I gave you between the 335 and the 476,
Okay.
The 335 is much closer to the budget exclusion model.
Okay.
And the higher number includes the higher tercile of peer comparisons.
Okay, so it comes in the range that's,
Mm-hmm.
okay. The other thing, just, that's not really to you, but to the board, I mean, people do pay taxes, so to assume that everything should be covered in fees. I mean,
So I'm happy to address
it's not a
that.
business,
It's-
right?
so-
So, not that I'm against fees.
Right.
And user, paying specifically for what they're using, but
No, I thank you for the question, and the recorder's office is a great example, that many of the services provided by the county are requested in a commercial environment, if you will, so title companies requesting information. Many of the requests for information are by people who are not residents of the county. And in fact, the statutes that control these three principal departments are aimed at having the people who use that particular service bear the cost of that service rather than, distributing it across all taxpayers. Right.
I think your point's well taken. I mean, the money, people do pay taxes, and obviously the difference between a fee and a tax is in the mind of the beholder. I mean, we need to look at being fair when we look at setting revenue, whether it's property tax or fees. Mr. Kilber, I think, was next.
Yeah, thank you. Actually wanted to hear from our elected officials over in the corner of the room on their take on this report since you all have the 3 individual reports. Does this seem legit? Is this something that you endorse? What are your thoughts?
Got it. I think it's on. For our department, there are such an enormous different number of activities that are covered, some of which philosophically I think should be subsidized by county taxpayers. For example, election-related items. On the other hand, a cost study may recommend, for example, for voter registration lists for candidates and political action committees, the recommendation may be that for a printed copy of such information, that the fee be raised significantly, but an electronic copy, for example, our county policy may be to continue to provide it for free. Now, obviously, we're underwriting a cost of preparing it, but there are policy outcomes that you can, or there are policy decisions that you can make about what costs as a board you'd like to subsidize. For birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses, marriage certificates, all of those things fall more along the lines of what Bruce was talking about as regards the recorder's office, which is statute sort of explicitly says boards have discretion to set the fee so that the fee covers the cost of administering the activity. And we have such a wide variety of different activities in our office that I don't know that the fees have been adequately looked at in a long time, and maybe didn't get adequately looked at in 2003 because of the environment around the office for a number of different reasons. So, are there questions about specific activities in my office you want me to address before I turn it over to the sheriff?
I have 2 thoughts. Just in terms of operating a business, it's a good idea to know what your overhead, your infrastructure is going to cost. You guys need to know that. It's helpful for me to know it in many ways, even though I'm not necessarily running a business. One of my fees jumps out, and that is this, to me, that seems low. Most of my others I don't know that we can even play with, but certainly the cost of service when my deputies serve somebody. We do it for free on criminal cases for the state's attorney, public defender, et cetera, but we charge on private suits. I believe our fees are probably 30% or more less than other comparable counties. I did that by surveying my lawyer friends, and they all said, well, you really ought to think about raising it. If we raise ours, well, for example, if we only raised ours 10%, we generate, I think, somewhere between another $15,000 to another $25,000, just a 10% raise. I will tell you, we won't get every penny because the private process servers they deliberately watch our rates and they'll stay a little bit below us, so we always lose some. But I think, at least in my office, we will more than cover the $5,000 cost just with that one fee, even if we touch nothing else, I think.
We are, Champaign County is probably one of the lowest recording fees left in the state. Back in 1993, the legislature got together and they set recording guidelines and fee structure so that all 102 counties in the state of Illinois had the exact same recording fee. And then came along GIS fee and RHSP fee, and everybody began playing around with fees, and now everybody is all over the place on their fees. It would be nice to know if we can garner more bang for our buck, because that's going to help everybody, especially in our automation fund, because since we're drawing so much out of that, it would be nice to know whether we could get some more back in. So I think that the long and short of it is that I think that you're not going to end up losing any money on it, and you may well end up creating some revenue.
Thank you. I think Mr. Schrader was next, and then I got you, Mr. Carter.
Thanks, Mr. Alex, appreciate it. Yeah. Old grumpy old George Ryan when he was governor, unfortunately. I happened to listen to on a radio talk show in Chicago where he got into a fight after he heard someone call in and say that fees were taxes. And he got on the phone and said, they're not taxes, they're fees. Well, the caller was right in my book. There are taxes. And you know, when you personally are affected by these fees, and I was because I happened to refinance my farm mortgage not too long ago, and I found out what fees are. And they're very, very, very high, and they're taxes. So I think the statement you made about, now I'm not going in a partisan slant with this, don't think I am, but I think the statement you made about our departments here, how well they've run and everything, I think is a model for state government. And obviously our budgeting is too. But we're able to take and make sense of who we affect in our departments, what services they need, and deliver them hopefully in an efficient, very timely, very courteous manner, I hope. I think that's being achieved. If it's not, I would like to see that improved, but I've not heard the opposite. So with that in mind, that we're looking at the potential of increasing taxes from the fee standpoint, I cringe a little bit because it's one of those kind of unhidden things that if you are a user, I don't have a problem with you paying extra. Those of us who obviously live and pay property taxes and service taxes that would include things we buy or services we need. You know, those are things that we know we're going to have. But when you're hit with these fees sometimes, you know, it paralyzes you to some degree. But I'm getting a long way around to my question because I want to make my point about how I feel about fee taxes. But I'm wondering how you can, like the things I brought about, like I just mentioned, how you can measure services along with the fee structure and whether or not we're delivering what we're supposed to do statutorily and from the standpoint of being a good government that takes care of the business at hand from whatever department it is, how you figure that in the customer service, I guess the customer service part of it, how you figure that in if we're deficient in one area, if you can isolate that, and if it's because of the lack of staffing that fees need to be increased or anything like that, if you're able to somehow decipher whether or not that's applicable. I don't know, I think maybe you mentioned statutorily if we're in compliance or anything like that, so I'll let you answer, thank you.
Sure. So being true to my consultant role, let me answer 3 different ways. So the first is that I agree with you about the impact of fees. So it really is a proximity issue of, you know, and the same goes true for your surgeon. There is no minor surgery if you're on the other end of the knife. So there's no small fee if it's being charged to me. I understand that fully. I think the second thing that when we think about whether or not the activities that are being charged a fee meet the guidelines or meet the requirements. And let's use the recorder as an example, and then I want to speak to a little bit of the Sheriff's Department as well. The guidelines on recording of the wide variety of different documents processed are so meticulous and so important that if an error is made in recording, the implication to that file lives on for decades. So when we look at a process, and this is really my third point, when we look at a process, by definition, and this is federal guideline, I'm not allowed to suppose what you should do. I can only account for what you are doing and assign a numeric value to that on the fee. What we do, though, is to make comment aside from the fee report to say, we saw these things. And the example I'll give you is our observation about the cost allocation plan, that we don't have any hard data. It's really not even relevant. It is relevant on the secondary to the fee calculation, but we will provide to the county an observation of, gee, it looks like, it looks like, you know, you're taking 3 minutes to do something that other counties take 20 minutes. So either you invented a new mousetrap or there's a shortcut or something in there. We'll call out those kinds of observations. Now, I mentioned the sheriff because he asked me a question that sent me back to our council to try and track down, and that was exactly that impact of fee discussion. And with the sheriff's permission, I'll share a little bit of that. So the question is about fingerprinting. So we're finding in every county that we're talking to, every sheriff is anticipating the concealed carry being passed. And the requirement that all of those people have to be fingerprinted. And that they're all going to want it tomorrow. And it'll literally be the snake swallowing the bowling ball. And it just so happened that while visiting the sheriff's office, I got an opportunity to do what we would do in a full study of, actually stopwatched the entire process from beginning to end. And I had already been provided all of the labor and the statistics, so we figured out that and I want to give you a range again because it's not compliant without the details. But doing a fingerprint is probably somewhere between $38 to $42 to do in labor, materials, time, the whole process all the way through. So when we were talking about this and said, you know, I don't mind charging everybody who wants to have a concealed carry, which are motivated buyers, by the way, $42 to get their fingerprints. But I think the example you used was, what about a volunteer to an elementary school who's just wanting to be a good citizen? I don't want to charge them $42. So what was interesting is that we found that both through the sheriff's action or through board action, that you can, through budgetary movement, declare a grant and say that, you know, inside, and it can be done at either level, as we understand it. It can be done at either level to say, you know, if it's fingerprinting for a not-for-profit or city or county function as a volunteer, the fee's not $40, it's $10. And you can, and it's really a budgetary exercise, right? Because you're already paying it out of the general fund. Everybody else would be additional revenue. This wouldn't be any different. But it allows a discretion, sir, of saying that some categories are afforded some relief. And I hope that answered the question. If not, I'm happy to continue.
Thank you. I think Mr. Carter was next.
I know this is important, but why don't we get the opportunity to sit down and really discuss this and not come what you got? And you kind of looked at me when I went back in time, but we used to have the opportunity to sit down on something like this and really get into it in no detail. Now, it's almost 9 o'clock. And I said, well, maybe I get back home to get half of the game. I'm being honest, not two-faced about it. But how long is it going to take us to digest all of this tonight?
Well, this is our first look at it tonight as a committee. We're the Finance Committee. We can talk about it as long as people want to talk about it. Then, if it gets recommended to go to the full board, we got a week and a half to look at it, ask questions of this gentleman, ask questions of the county administrator, ask questions of the elected officials, digest it, and come to your own conclusions, and then we'll see it again at the full board meeting.
Well, is it so that we couldn't have got this in our package in the next meeting? Then we'd had a chance, you know. Is it going to sink the boat if we don't do it tonight?
I doubt it.
No, this is what I'm saying. But you come in, you have all of this material up here to try to digest tonight. And you know good and well, I was taught with some kind of character. And I'm gonna be, you cannot do that.
Well, Mr. Carter,
If you're gonna be honest with
I
yourself.
appreciate your comments, but we got to see it for the first time sometime, and this is the first time we're seeing it, and it's not the last time we'll see it. I mean, I don't know
Well,
what else to
Mr.
tell
Chairman,
you.
it used to didn't be this way.
Well,
It used to didn't be this way.
I,
We got the material in the package, when we come here, we know what we had to do, and vote on it and go home.
I will,
Not have a study session all the time.
I will take your word for that, Mr. Carter. First, James.
Well, I'm the guy that doesn't like to hire consultants all the time, but I do know they're needed at times. And the way I'm reading this, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if we don't have this study, the state probably wouldn't okay us raising some of the fees and stuff that we need to raise. Am I correct?
I don't know that okay is the word that I would use. The documentation on the cost of your fees is discoverable. So what would happen is somebody would have to challenge your fee, or actually on the cost allocation plan, you may be challenged by a grant administrator.
Let me write that down because I want to do that. But, so, I understand because of the legal end of it, that's fine. I'm one, and no difference to you or any consultant, but I'm one, just like when we do salary surveys or employee surveys or what have you, we sort of rely on staff to go out and crunch them numbers in the local area and come back to us. I think that compiling a lot of this information sometimes is a big undertaking, and we really don't have the staff to do it or the expertise to do it, I don't think. So, you know, and I hate studies, I just hate them, and I hate raising fees because unlike some on my side, a fee is a tax. You know, I don't care how we cut it because sooner or later I'm going to need it, and I'm going to have to pay it. I'm going to be like Mr. Schroeder over there, I'm going to turn my hair around. But with that said, I guess we need to look at it, we need to discuss it some more, but we need to move with it.
And so.
Thank you. And at this point, I think we've moved on into discussion sort of a study. So I'm going to ask if there are any more questions for Mr. Delashman about his presentation. I would ask that we offer those to him now. If your comments are with regard to whether or not we proceed with the study, I'd ask you to hold them until we get to that part of the agenda. Ms. Petrie?
Yes, I have three, and maybe a follow-up, depending on your answers. First is, I have a great deal of concerns as to your methodology of having this anonymous crunching of numbers that you compare us to. This is apples and oranges, and what I see, actually, the potential of this happening is fee inflation. And maybe we here are doing the best job of all of the counties in the fact that we do such an excellent job. So this parameter is quite concerning to me. All right. Second is you have three departments here, and I'm curious.
Patsy, do you want to let them respond to these one at a time, I think?
Okay.
Let's go back and forth
All
on this,
right.
just so he
Yeah,
doesn't
fine.
lose the plot.
So I agree with you that if the only methodology was comparative, that it would be flawed on its substance. That inside, and I've been in 3 counties comparable to you in the last week, and how they look at some of the processes are, I don't know that any of the 3 of them are the same. So if the only study was comparison, I would agree with you, it's apples and orange, and it would be hard to know whether or not you were good or not. But the second part of the study, where we take your budget and exclude those things that are clearly not feasible, leaving all of the remainder in your budget, which should be covered by your fee revenue, and we take your fee revenue and compare that and it doesn't cover it, that's the second part of the method that says, if I've excluded everything else, and I think the clerk had a great example of, in his department, we excluded the totality of all election activities from his budget. And a significant amount of the tax transactions within his department, which are not feasible. And we took the remaining budget and all of his fee revenue and compared the two of them. And his fee revenue did not cover his remaining budget through that calculation. And that's what gives us the ability to say, if you believe that fees should cover cost, then that formula will tell you the gap that it does not.
Okay. Second,
Absolutely.
you have three elected departments here. Why is the circuit clerk not included?
That's a great question. And to some degree, through the sheriff's department, there's an exchange between the sheriff's department and the circuit clerk on particular fees that are collected in one department that pay for like court security. And a lot of times those fees are administratively and budget exchanged back and forth. But there are very few fees within the circuit clerk that are subject to this kind of a process. Those that are tend to be on the sheriff's side or reflect into the circuit clerk.
Okay.
Oh, I'm going to ask Ms. Busey to jump in here too, because I asked essentially that same question last week when I saw this.
Well, and
Okay.
effectively, my understanding is that the statutes allow for this kind of cost analysis study for fees for these three offices. And the fees that the circuit clerk collects are largely defined by different guidelines by the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts, by statutes, and there is no allowance for the county board to change the fees that the circuit clerk collects. There are some exceptions. I mean, the circuit clerk has some special revenue funds where there is a statutory maximum, and she currently is not charging the statutory maximum and clearly can come back to the county board and ask that you change that fee. But my understanding is she really doesn't administer any fees other than those that get looked at for the sheriff that are subject to this cost analysis, increasing above the statutory max.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation. All right, my third question is, should we choose to do this, and you create this fee potential structure, how can that be used in the future by the county board so we don't have to pay for this all over again? Do you suggest that every 2 years they get increased across the board at 3% or such like?
I'm not sure that a budget incremental basis would pass the discoverable test. However, the completion of every study, each department head is provided all of the work product. So all of our Excel spreadsheets, everything that we do in connection with the project is delivered to the department heads.
So they can replug in?
They can certainly repurpose the information.
Okay.
I think what I'd like to add, because there is some inherent value in the knowledge of my consultants, that the OMB 87 circular on indirect cost is a high contributor to mental health counseling. It's just a maze of data, and if you don't spend much time into that, then it's hard to really work your way through it. So my guys and gals have spent a lot of time in that. They're pretty good at navigating it. We can do it quickly. I did want to just move just a second to compliment the departments, though. When I met with the administrator and the three department heads, I described a preliminary process that I think I was pretty clear said took 4 weeks. And all of them said, that's great, we want it in 11 days. And my answer was, well, if you've got good control of your data, we can do that. And what I want to point out is that all three of these department heads have a level of insight into their departments that I think would be enviable by many of their peers in other counties.
It's appreciated. Ms. Shorts was next.
2 quick questions. In your report, could you give us separately the fee that would or should be charged based on the cost discrepancy separate from the comparison? So we know, so if we want to, rather than follow your methodology, if our methodology is we just want to recover our costs, this is what we do. Is that possible?
Yeah, and to an even deeper point than
Okay.
that. And so let's use the marriage license as an example for that one.
Okay, that's
The
fine. I mean,
final- I'm sorry?
It's fine. I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but We do have a few more items on the agenda, so I promise it will be short. The other question is, did you ever discover that some fees can be lowered? I think it will be easier to sell a fee increase to the public if you say, we looked at our fees and these were too high and these were too low. Is it even, from your experience?
I have. We
Okay.
do encounter things that are lower, and now what's interesting is that the interpretation of the statute is that you can still charge the minimum of the statute, even if your costs are lower, but, yeah, you can't charge more than your cost. It is improper for a government to make profit on the service.
Okay, Mr. Carter, question on the presentation.
Yeah.
Sir.
Well, since we're gonna stay in Wally in it, I might well get in it.
Yes, sir.
About your sex offender registration fee, you got, annual fee, and then mostly, are they working? I thought most of the people that get out, they can't even get a job.
So that's a great question, sir, and if you'll allow me just to take it a little bit step further.
Well, it's a lot here that we should take time and digest, but I see that
So
we
I'll-
not, you know, we
I'll
gonna
be
be the
brief
other
to
way
the point. that-
around.
that
But
within
then
the-
who gonna pay? The taxpayer gonna pay it for them?
I wouldn't imagine so, but within the sheriff's department, there are many fees that have a remarkably low collection rate.
Then you got the guys with an ankle fee. They don't get no job either.
Actually, you have one of the better counties on collecting that.
So I'm wondering who's gonna end up paying for them.
Well, so ultimately, sir, the general fund, which still has to fund the operation of the department, ends up paying for it.
At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion on item F5B, which is approval of an agreement with Bellwether Advantage LLC to conduct a comprehensive fee review for offices of the county clerk, recorder, and sheriff. Thank you, Mr. Harkey and Mr. Mitchell. If this is approved, my understanding is that the county administrator will come back to the full board with a budget amendment, which I believe to be in the amount of $15,000. Is that correct, Deb?
That's correct, and actually, I was going to bring it as a budget transfer because there's $25,000 left in the general county contingent line in the fiscal 2013 budget, so we could do this as a transfer rather than an amendment.
It's the same money either way. It's already been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments with regard to whether we proceed with the study or not? Seeing none, all those sorry, Ms. Court?
Yeah, I want to, you say it's going to come out of contingent fund, or is the three offices, the clerk, the recorder, the sheriff, is going to come out of their budget?
It'd be out of the contingency line item in the general corporate fund. So the sheriff, the clerk, and the recorder paid the $1,000 each up front to do the preliminary study, and the $15,000, if we approve it, would come out of the general corporate budget. Are there any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. That motion passes. Now we go to the top of the county administrator report. Thank you, sir. We have the General Corporate Fund 2013 Budget Report and Budget Change Report for our information. Deb?
It's hasn't changed significantly. We still are looking at revenue coming in at about 101%. The strongest growth is in the real estate transactions and non-business licenses and permits. The sales tax slowed down a little bit this last month, so that the quarter cent looks like it may not come in at 100%. Everything else is fairly consistent with where it's been the past several months. On the expenditure side, we continue to underspend in personnel and services. However, we are spending more than what's budgeted, potentially in commodities, with an overall view of underspending the budget by about 2%, coming in at about 98%. So based on the current budget, this fiscal year would end in a $722,000 deficit. And remember, there are two really big things that contribute to that. I tell you every month: the payoff of the forgiveness of the nursing home loan of $333,000 and a labor agreement that we did earlier this year. But on the projected side, it looks like we should end revenue positive by about $280,000 at this point, which will still enable us to maintain a fund balance goal at above our 12.5% fund balance goal at the end of the year. And on the budget change, just one item had changed since the last time this was reported, and those are listed there for your information.
Thank you, Deb. Again, good news and continued appreciation to everybody who's helping keep us, on the right track. Move on to item 3. Do we place those on file? I should know this by now.
Yeah, there's 1 and 2, yeah.
May I have a motion to accept and approve the General Corporate Fund Budget Report and Budget Change Report? Mr. James, Mr. Mitchell, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Next, on to the Job Content Evaluation Committee recommendations. We have 4 of these. These are the finance end of the finance end of the output from the Job Content Evaluation Committee that we talked about under policy. I would entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation that the Chief of the Civil Division of State's Attorney's Office be placed in grade range L. Mr. Kibler, second. Mr. Esri, are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That motion carries. I would entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the Job Content Evaluation Committee to place the Senior Executive Secretary position for the State's Attorney's Office in grade range I. Mr. Esri. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw your hand moving. Mr. Langenheim and Mr. Jay. Are there comments or questions? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That motion passes. Our next item is to accept, I would entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the Job Content Evaluation Committee to place the State's Attorney Office Manager position in grade range H. May I have a motion, please? So moved by Mr. Schrader, second by Mr. Esri. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That motion carries. Finally, may I have a motion to accept the Job Content Evaluation Committee's recommendation to place the Deputy County Administrator for Finance position in grade range M. Mr. James. Second. Mr. Quisenberry. Discussion, comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion carries. Finally, under the County Administrator's agenda, we have a request for approval to changes with the contract with ILPP related to the corrections needs study, and Deb has distributed a copy of that. And I'm going to accept a motion to forward this to the full board with a recommendation for approval. Ms. Berkson. Second. And Mr. Kurtz. Floor is now open for discussion. Mr. James.
I'm not going to support this because when we drafted that contract, I thought it was a good contract. We went over it pretty thoroughly, and I understand that there were some groups that wanted more time, but we had formed that task force previous to this, and there was plenty of time for public input. It's another one of them things where we just keep adding on, and I think Mr. Kalmanoff did an excellent job so far. The report is what it's going to be. He outlined all of his data and everything he was going to be doing for us, and to keep adding because we want to extend it out. He was agreeable at our last meeting that he was going to do that. I didn't hear any money being tossed about. I understand he's incurred some more cost. But if we do this, there again, if we allocate 25 more thousand or whatever the case may be, that's money that I always feel we should be using toward the employees and doing things like that once we've set a contract. And it's not like he's doing a building or anything. He did a study. He knew what the parameters was. He's done plenty of studies before, so I won't support it.
Thank you. Ms. Schwartz.
I'm somewhat concerned about the date. I'm concerned about the money too, but that was already stated. I think July 30th is a date that a lot of people in the community won't be here. Not only we usually cancel a lot of county boards meetings, but this community being a university community, but not even university people that have kids at schools and so on will not be here. So I know that part of the money is supposed to be for additional public engagement and so on. Scheduling anything in July looks like we're trying to do it when nobody's in town. And even if that's not the intent, just having that appearance would not be a good idea. So we waited so long, I'm not interested in waiting another year. And I understand August is a very busy month with budget hearings, but I think waiting until September and not creating the appearance that we tried to schedule something so nobody can comment on that would be really important, given how loaded that whole topic is.
Thank you. Mr. Harkey.
Yeah, despite our differences in hairstyles, Mr. James and I are of the same mind on this. I think that, we signed this contract. It was before I became a member of this board. That means there's at least 6 or 7 months for people to put input. I realize we're waiting for the Community Justice Task Force report, but I'm fully capable of integrating those two reports after reading them myself without spending another $25,000 on them. Because I'm of the mind that whatever comes out in the reports, we're going to do what we think of as a board is important regardless of what either report says. And as far as community involvement, I would hesitate to say that anybody's had more community input than I have on this because I've been to an awful lot of meetings where I've been the only person there. So I know what my community wants to do on this. So I think the idea of throwing another $25,000 at this is a mistake. To me, that's the first-year salary for a reentry coordinator, first-year salary for a mental health professional working for the county. So I think it's a bad idea, and I'll be voting against it too.
Anyone else have? Thank you. Anyone? Sounds like that'll happen. Would anyone else like to comment? Ms. Petrie.
I do concur about the date that, date choice that Ms. Schwartz has made a point about. My question to Ms. Busey is, how did you come up with the figure that is here in your memo for extension of this contract?
That number basically has come from Dr. Kamanoff and is what he has put in additional time and resources in scope that grew with this project over the last several months because of much greater engagement and much greater participation from the Community Justice Task Force and other public entities that he met with than was originally anticipated in the original contract document. And then also the delay. And I don't believe that, if the board wants to change the date from July 30th to September, that is probably not a problem at all and could be done.
Any other comments? Mr. Harper.
Yes, I guess I've sat here pretty quietly listening to everything all night. Oh, we spent a hell of a lot of money tonight. And we ran one person under the bus who had the least amount to request, and she's bringing in revenue. Now, I can't, the community task force should have known what the dates are. We spent $20,000 on servers because the judge is pissed off. Revenue makes things work, so I'm with Mr. Harkey and Mr. James. I will not be supporting this.
Are there any other questions, comments? Ms. Schwartz.
Just more technical, so we still need a date for the delivery regardless of the 25. Can we separate the two questions?
If the contract extension isn't approved, I think it begs the question of what we're getting. So I think if this fails, I don't think there's any point setting the date for the report until we can go back to ILPP and negotiate what we want from them, given that we don't want to spend any more money, assuming that's the outcome of this vote. In other words, I think we will have to adjust the scope of what it is that we're expecting. Because
Right, but there was a final report that was supposed to come in.
Well, right, but at this point, we've essentially represented to them that we want them to take the Community Justice Task Force report, analyze that, incorporate that in the report, do additional, present the report on some date, which we currently tentatively is July 30th, and then conduct additional public engagement around the release of that report.
Okay, so can we separate the questions? So
we
question one is, do we want to ask them? Question two is, do we want it in July? Because
Yes, I think they are two separate issues, but I think we probably have to vote on this contract amendment as an up or down issue, and then if it fails, I think at the full board meeting, we talk about what we actually, between now and the full board meeting, we talk about what we actually want and get that at the full board meeting. Incidentally, are there other comments or questions? Ms. Bergson.
This whole business of how much we're spending on Kalmanoff, it came out of the jail thing, and it was less than 1% for planning how to spend all those millions. And it's still less than 1%. And I think, 25,000 may look big, but when you look at these huge real estate ventures we have embarked on with quite inadequate planning, I think it's much better to spend 25,000 on the planning and not end up with some of the disasters that we have had from inadequate planning.
Mr. McGuire.
I guess for clarification, how much was the original contract?
120,000.
120,000, so he's talking about wanting another 20, 30. That's 10% would be 12%, 20%, which seems a little odd to finish. And then how much of this is he expecting for something he's already done? So this is just saying, no, don't do more.
Well, yeah, my impression, based on having negotiated some of this with him to get to the point that we were able to present this tonight, was that this is for work that is beyond the scope of the original contract, that arises from basically three, and I think he actually broke down the costs into three categories, and it was like, 6,000, 9,000, and 10,000 or something. And I told him it's a small enough dollar amount. We'll either decide yes or no based on the total. And the primary drivers were the delays, which were partly on our end, partly on his end, and primarily the request, the recent request, which was, I guess, probably not formally agreed to by the board, but which seemed to be a consensus that we wanted to get the Community Justice Task Force report rolled into this. There got to be a chicken and egg thing. As you remember, when we had the draft report, there were some comments from the task force folks like, hey, I thought we were going to be heard, and if his report's going to come out in May and our report's going to come out in June, then that means that obviously he didn't take our report into account. So I think I am supportive of this based on, I think we've had a strong working relationship with Kalmanoff. I think he's done a lot of good helping get a process that was pretty adversarial back on track to the point that we're getting, I think, pretty strong community buy-in. And I would like to see that continue. So I'm going to support this based on the fact that, say, again, in the context of the overall contract, it's a relatively small amount of money, and if it ensures that we get a process that everybody's happy with, then I'm willing to support it. And I think Mr. Langenheim is next. I'm sorry for taking your time.
The non-passage or passage of this extension will have on the content of the report that we will, in fact, get. In other words, is leaving this out going to sabotage what's already been done?
I don't know. I certainly feel like the report would be better if he spends more time on it, but I can't speak to whether, how much more or less useful it's going to be if we do or don't, pass the extension. Astrid, do you want to weigh in on this? All right.
I mean, he's done what he's done, and now we asked him to do a whole lot more.
We're asking or he's asking?
We're asking.
Ms. Schwartz, sorry.
I'm not sure I understand. So what does it mean for him to incorporate the Justice Task Force findings? I mean, is he going to bring it in and say, okay, you have that much money to spend, so I'll prioritize for you, this is how much you'll spend on building, and this is how much, I mean, they have their own report, so what exactly does it mean to incorporate? And the other question I have is, are we not unintentionally minimizing their report by saying, oh, you can now forget about theirs because it's already been incorporated? I mean, how do they feel about incorporating their report into a pick and choose of whatever he'll do?
I think it was the concerns of the task force that led to this in the first place. Yeah, I think what he's doing is would not be just stapling the CJTF report to the back. I think the concern was the most important thing, 90% of what we're paying for in his plan is essentially an action plan that says go forth and do X, Y, and Z. And I think the desire is to make sure that he has gotten all the value he can get out of the CJTF in terms of getting any and all of their recommendations and findings of fact from their report into his report, not just putting them in there, but actually using them to inform the development of his action plan. Incidentally, as far as the timing is concerned, I don't think Kalmanoff cares. The July 30th date was an attempt to find a date that was after the release of the Community Justice Task Force report and a few weeks for him to actually do the additional work to incorporate it, but before the budget cycle, both so that we would have an idea what recommendations we might want to fund in the upcoming budget year, and so we would not be trying to, deal with this during the August when we're doing our legislative budget hearings. He expressed that he doesn't, if we want to wait till September or October, I think he would be fine with that. But again, if we want him to incorporate the CJTF and continue, basically finish this up in the way that he would like to do it, he's going to want more money. Mr. James.
I guess I go back to my original comments. He's done these studies, he knows what he's looking at. I agree with Josh that when we get that other report, we can blend it in. We're going to be reviewing this for time to come. It's not like we're going to do anything overnight with a lot of this stuff. Just spending that money when someone's told us that we're ready to do it, and here it is, and we even brought him back in and had him speak to us. He's met with all these groups. Let's just move on with this and get it done.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Yeah, Ms. Busey.
I just would like to say is, having worked with this, having worked with the task force and with Dr. Kalmanoff and the stakeholders, I believe it has been a unique experience working with ILPP and Dr. Kalmanoff. And I believe that he has been able to create a synergy within this community that has brought two very strongly competing forces to the same table where they are working together. And I do attribute a lot of that to his ability to mediate and to, provide an overview and assessment of how things work, and that he's been very successful in that. I believe there is a great advantage to continuing to work with him until we can get an action plan in place and until we can create the dynamics to keep that momentum going within this community. And I believe he's someone who can do that. That's just my own personal perspective, and I just had to share it with you. My fear is that if we just end up with two reports, one from the task force and one from Kalmanoff, and that they haven't been interwoven to work together, that we'll have two reports, and I'm not sure exactly what you, the county board, will then do in terms of keeping it moving with all of the players who are instrumental to this issue. Thank you.
I understand you said we have to vote on it as a package, but personally, if we keep the July 30th date, this is a no-go for me, because not only I won't be here, I'm not the major player, but I think the community is not here. So if the purpose is to actually bring the community in and say, okay, we have some time to think about the Justice Task Force, and I'm not sure what this other public engagement is. I understand the need to have stuff before the budget hearings, but maybe we should have thought about when we scheduled the Justice Task Force to be delivered in April and not in June. Again, and the appearance that we've scheduled things when everybody's out of town is going to be so counterproductive that I just can't vote for that. So I absolutely understand what Deb is saying, and I absolutely think that I never thought that what is happening would have been possible. So I'm absolutely convinced that this is all Kalmanoff. So I can, as much as I don't feel like spending the money, I think I can handle that. But I think rushing and doing it all in July is totally detrimental to the process, so I can't support it.
Ms. Bergson?
I agree that they should be separated. I don't see there's any reason not to separate them.
I guess the only reason I say I was proposing to vote on it as a unit is so that we can give Kalmanoff some direction. I guess, having spoken to Kalmanoff about it, I don't think he cares when the time for, when the final report's delivered, as long as it's after he's had a chance to see the CJTF report. I guess would it be a motion to amend the, I guess I could entertain a motion to amend the contract to change the date. And I guess we will use that as a vote as to where people want the date to be, regardless of whether hopefully people will vote based on when they want the date to be, even if they plan on voting against spending the money. Ms. Michaels?
I have a question. at this point, what we're talking about is combining a couple of committees' information together, if you will, the paid consultant and the committee. We haven't even seen anything from the committee yet. I don't want to be paying for something if there really isn't anything there to combine.
Well, we saw the draft report in December.
And the draft report didn't have a whole lot in it, quite frankly, and I apologize for being rude, but that was my opinion, so.
I mean, we're kind of, see here, I guess, I would, like I said, I would entertain a motion to change the date if that's an issue that people have with the report, and we'll see where the board sits, or stands on that. Ms. Petrie? Okay, Ms. Schwartz.
I'll move to change it. If nothing else, regardless of anything else, I would not want to make any decisions when everybody's out of town and having it look like the board just tried to sneak something really important by with nobody having
Okay.
any say.
Well, Ms. Schwartz,
Yeah,
I'll take that as a motion.
I'll make the motion
I'll
to
take that
move
as a
it to,
motion to amend the
September?
resolution to put
To a
the
study
date, to
session
put the
in
date as a
September.
study session in September. Mr. Kurtz has seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, I'll make some. I mean, I don't think Kalmanoff cares. The only issue is that we may not know what he's going to recommend until we're pretty far along in the budget cycle, but we're not going to have that much money to spend anyway, so.
Yeah,
it's probably
exactly.
isn't an
The money
issue.
we have is the public safety sales tax. We know exactly how much of that is
I'd-
committed to
I'd-
debt services and so on. So there's not much you can do with that. So you can just decide you're going to do
Yeah,
it this
I
or
mean,
that. There's like 100 and something
September
thousand.
seems fine to me. Are there any additional comments or discussion, Ms. Petrie, on the extension, on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of moving the date to September signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. And ask for, I'm going to call division on that. Those in favor of September? July? Okay, September it is. So the motion on the floor is now to ask the county administrator to come back with a budget amendment for $25,000. As a roll call, it is now for a report which integrates the Community Justice Task Force findings and which is to be delivered in September. Ms. Schwartz?
The public engagement, what are we talking about? Because that was mentioned as one of the items.
Like a couple more public hearings is my impression, like the thing they did with CUCPJ at the library.
Kalmanoff?
Yeah, with Kalmanoff.
Right. He's also interested in engaging as many public community groups as possible, which would go outside of the parameters of a public hearing, like Kiwanis groups, Rotary groups, the Chamber of Commerce, the League of Women Voters, the Farm Bureau. I mean, as much as possible, he would like to engage those groups in public hearings.
No, I think that's important simply because we need the community buy-in. No matter what, this is going to be a really difficult decision. So if we're not done with the public hearings, I'll support that.
Okay, any additional comments? Ms. Petrie on the main motion.
All right. Thank you very much. I would like to support what Ms. Busey has explained, and I know we are in spending fatigue at this juncture. We've been here for 3.5 hours, and that's turning into be dilatory to our becoming penny wise and pound foolish on this situation. And I do encourage people to support the extension of this contract. I think we're cutting off our own noses to spider faces, and past history of boards when they get into spending fatigue have made rash decisions and then just wasted gazooms of money later on. That wasn't a very brilliant word, but I'm tired.
Mr. James.
I just don't see the concept of us wasting money if we don't go with these other meetings, because when he presented his contract, he presented us a contract with all the facts as they were outlined. He did his best. I really don't think meeting with an exchange club and Rotary and all that's going to be earth-shattering and bring some new info that he's going to put in that report. The Justice Task Force, in my mind, like everybody else in this world, should have stepped up to the plate. They had plenty of time to do it. They met with him. I just don't see how we're going to get any more information than what he's already had and from what he proposed. I understand, I hear some of the reasoning, but in my mind, when I'm spending $25,000 extra, when an employee comes to us and they're saying we need more money for our families, and we say, here's the budget, where's the justice?
I'm sorry, somebody, Ms. Cowart. I was going to point out, the source of this funding is Public Safety Sales Tax Fund, not that it really matters. Ms. Cowart.
I'm going to say I'm going to support this. At the last meeting we had with Dr. Cameron, we asked him to do this for us, and we talked about extra fee for that. So I'm going to support this, and I hope all the other board members that was here that night will support it too.
Thank you, Ms. Cowart. Are there any other comments, questions,
Would
discussion?
you state the motion before we take the vote?
The motion is to forward to the full board with a recommendation for, excuse me, the motion is to ask county administrator to bring a budget amendment to the full board. Oh, sorry, hold on. It's late
The
night.
motion is to approve an amendment to the ILPP contract to delay the delivery of the final report to September 2013 and incorporate additional work and additional compensation in that contract of $25,000, which will be paid from the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund.
Couldn't have said it better myself, literally. Are there any additional comments or questions before we vote? Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. This is more than dollars and cents.
Could we have a roll call vote?
It's
On the table already. Thank you, Ralph. Go back 35 years when we built the jail. I bet you that discussion was going on here, too. Well, let's not spend that much, because, we need to stay within budget. And, let's cut this and let's cut that. Well, now, folks, here we are sitting 35 years later looking at a jail that's falling apart, okay? We're playing the same game we played 35 years ago, even though I wasn't here, and I was much younger. And I'm getting older by the minute as we sit here tonight. That it's important that what Mr. Kalmanoff has done has put together a social network, not just of dollars and cents, but of bringing together both sides of the community, whether it be from the sheriff's office, the judges, and the police department, who in many cases have been at loggerheads with the community, to see that the community is finally sitting down and talking to each other rather than yelling at each other. And Mr. Kalmanoff has put that together in a way that is, in my estimation, a unique situation in our community. It hasn't happened in a long time. And I feel it's important that we play this out to its final conclusion, which will be the betterment of our community in many, many ways. And so let's look at it not from a point of dollars and cents, but what could mean to the community over the next 20 to 30 years, because it's going to change the way we do business here, when it be the justice system, the incarceration rate, or how we go about talking with the entities that are part of our community, both the north end and the south end working together. So I'm in support of this extension.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtz. Mr. Hartke.
Yeah, I have just one final thing. Deb, your points are really, really hitting home with me, and I get that Mr. Kalmanoff has been a fantastic catalyst for this community and a leader, but are we going to extend his contract to keep him with us for the next 5 to 10 years until we can do this? I think we need to find leadership within our own community to lead us on this and to help us find good solutions that incorporates what the community wants. And I also agree with Mr. James that talking to another couple of groups isn't going to bring us with a whole new idea and approach to this, so.
Ms. Schwartz.
Yeah, my concern, though, is because if we don't combine the reports as much as I was opposed to it before that, his action plan, as was stated in the report he had, primarily consisted of build this or build that. It will be really easy to get focused on build this or build that and totally leave aside what the Justice Task Force has been talking about. And so unless we have one action plan that puts priorities and includes the non-build versions, we risk totally not even discussing that because it will be so easy to have a tunnel vision and just look at the consultant report. So as much as I was opposed to it before coming in today, I think I'm going to vote for that.
Ms. Michaels. We have a call for the question and a second. All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The question's been called. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Hartke?
Do you know that's
No.
not correct?
James? No. Jay? No. Kibler?
No.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Langenheim. McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Petrie. Quisenberry. Schrader. Schwartz. Bergson. Carter. Coert. Esri. Harper. And Alex.
Yes.
I had 10 to, yeah, I had 9.
10 yeas or 10 nays?
10 yeses.
We'll declare that to have passed. Moving on to the last item, this is on your addendum number 2. This is a request for approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Champaign, the City of Urbana, Champaign County, and the Village of Rantoul related to making Champaign lead agency for spending money from a Justice Assistance Grant. May I have a motion for approval? Ms. Coert, is there a second? Mr. Esri. Sheriff, I'm not going to make you talk if you don't want to. I asked the sheriff before the meeting what this was spent on, and he said fuel for vehicles. Is that
Yeah, it's a
fair?
grant we get every year. It varies. The last couple of years, we spent it on fuel. That's the line item we'll spend it on this time.
Thank you, Sheriff. Is there any discussion or comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes. That,
Consent agenda.
items for consent. C 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, D1, E1 and 2, F,
All the way down.
no, those
none
all
of those,
failed.
none of those.
F,
None of those.
none of those.
That's it.
That's it. G and G1.
Yeah.
That blessedly concludes the finance agenda. Thank you for your patience.
Ms. Bergson. Turn on your microphone if you want to do it from there.
I'll do it from here. It should be about 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, Al. I missed an item. We got to talk about whether to have a finance committee meeting.
We're going to do that at the end. I'll take all three at one time.
Can we, would anyone like to move that we take all these monthly reports?
So moved.
And accept them?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay.
Other business? I will try to get some of these people here to make semi-annual reports, some of the heads of these departments. And this is your last freebie from Justice. We'll get you pretty soon now.
Okay, finally, we need a determination on whether you want to cancel all three of the Cal meetings for July. Can I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Langenheim, second by Ms. Bergson. Any discussion? What? Who was it? One of those guys over there. Okay. Mr. Hartke?
I will prevent everybody because I already made my statement, but I will just point out that we've just spent 3 hours and 45 minutes at our June meeting, so maybe there might be business to conduct in July.
Thank you. Mr. Alex?
To that point, I was going to ask the county administrator for a forecast of the upcoming finance agenda. I mean, one of the reasons that finance is generally light in July is because the county administrator is focused on working with the department heads for the upcoming budget. So I think part of the reason it was so heavy this time was because Deb's been trying to clear her. A, she was out for a little while, so there was a backlog. B, she's trying to clear some of her calendar to be able to work on the budget with the department heads. So what are we, I mean, if had the ILPP contract failed, I might have a different opinion because I would think we would have had to rehash that. But I'm not sure what else we've got coming in July. I mean, if your feeling is that there's essentially no business, then I'm willing to do it. Otherwise, I want to be here anyway. I'm happy to have a meeting.
I agree with you. Unless there's some emergency budget amendment, I'm not aware of any right now, but those could come straight to the full board. I wouldn't anticipate other business in July for
Okay.
finance.
I mean, it's a heavily agenda. The committee really isn't doing anything that's not driven by requests through the agenda or the budget process at this point. So if Deb doesn't have anything to bring, I wouldn't have anything to act on anyway.
Do we have the same for policy? One appointment. There's only one appointment, which can be pushed off until the county board meeting. I don't think that's a problem. All right, any other discussion on that issue? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Nay. Motion carries. We will have only the county board meeting in July. Call for adjournment. So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye.